Howdy folks, Corky Duke Farminator here. Come with me if you want to. This is Farming Simulator 22, Michigan Farms Map. Schafer's Ag Service Part 119. This is an accurate replica of the farm I grew up on. And we are in the middle of a grass harvest. This thing needs to stop stuffing. All right, there we go. That should do it. Okay. Okay, where is my... Right there. Done with this field? I don't think so. No. Alrighty. Alright. 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 Hey Billy, how you doing? Thanks for joining the stream. Hope you're doing good today. Trying to expand this field here. Oh, excuse me. Well, I'm glad you're fantastic. I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking. Got to work tonight. Normally I have Monday nights off, but get a little overtime in, I guess. Oh. Hey Austin, how you doing? Thanks for joining the stream. It's doing good. Still in the barn. I think next month will be the first time I'll need it next month for my barley. So I'll be breaking it out next month. Might also buy a reaper combine too. Not sure yet. Both my reaper combines and my cake and cookie farm, I think, have over 100 hours on them. And next week I got a colonoscopy. What a pain in the ass. Alrighty. With this whole field planted grass, so in 2 months from now, it'll be almost double the grass harvest. Next month I'll be able to do this new field that I created. I got 2 cuttings out of that one, then I turned it into a wheat field. If I buy it at all, it'll be, it could be or next month when I start harvesting the barley. Or the canola. Is the canola next month too? No. Canola's in July. It might not be till July when I buy it. Dang it, how did that get missed? Alright, All right. Set and forget time now. Oh man, it did it again. What is the damn problem? No, what are you doing? What are you doing? Damn it. Not want you to do that. All right. I'm going to try something here. See if it works. All right. Is it all in the grass or hay? But it looks like it does. It's all hay. All right. That's interesting. Hey, it's still hay. That's interesting. All right. Over 1 million liters of hay. Well, this should help my shortage of hay big time. Big time. What are you doing? What are you doing? Go straight down the damn road. The fuck? Good. Why are you turning around? All right. What am I doing?
Janine Bureau is walking.
Hey everybody, good evening from New York. I'm Jacob Soberoff and for Chris Hayes. So, a lot has been said about the Democrats in last night's midterm primaries as reporters, pundits, and the people of the internet look for daylight between the party's establishment and its left wing. But if you missed the Republican primaries, oh boy, you missed another really big piece of the puzzle heading into November. Election deniers and big lie believers not only still have a home in the party of Donald Trump, they have a starring role in his midterm strategy, so to speak. Remember, he said the SAVE Act, his voter suppression bill, he said it would guarantee the midterms. Last night in Wisconsin, Republicans overwhelmingly chose sitting Congressman Tom Tiffany as their candidate for governor. If Tom Tiffany wins, that's pivotal in swing states elections will be overseen by a guy who tried to overturn the 2020 election.
Congressman Tom Tiffany was one of many who objected to certifying President-elect Joe Biden's victory during the certification process this week.
And the reason I did that is because of the election improprieties that are going on in various states around America, including in Wisconsin.
That was Tiffany on January 7th, the day after the insurrection, explaining why he voted to overturn Joe Biden's victories in Arizona and Pennsylvania. Tiffany also said that he would have voted to overturn his own state's presidential election results, but get this, not the results of the House race that he won.
Of course.
In fact, while campaigning for governor this spring, Tiffany defended federal probes into election officials, and he refused to say that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. And then there's Minnesota, where Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, aka Mike Pillow, aka Lumpy Pillow, guess my you-know-what, was a candidate in the Republican primary for governor. Lindell used his own money to spread election lies in the lead-up to January 6th. The next week, just before Joe Biden's inauguration, Lindell was photographed leaving the White House with a memo appearing to bear the phrases, "Insurrection Act now and martial law if necessary." As soon as the vote counting started last night, Lindell was behind by double digits the Minnesota House Speaker Lisa Kennedy. He gave his followers sunny updates on Lindell.
We just gained 5,000 votes, and we gained 5,000 votes, everybody. And the last 13,000 votes that were counted, we got 5,000. We could gain 5,000 votes. So let's think about this. That means I got 10,000, and the rest of them got 3,000. If this is a sign, we will have the lead within an hour.
There's no alley bell shoot. The math did not check out. And no, Mike Lindell did not win. It was not even close. But guess what? He still has not conceded.
All of a sudden, it went like this for me when the day up, and then it went straight up for her. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not going to give up this race until the votes are counted. That's nonsense.
Until the votes are counted?
Until the votes are counted where I can't win.
Votes are counted. For the record, Lisa DeMuth was declared the winner by the Associated Press. She defeated Mike Pillow by 11 points and counting, and the Trump-endorsed candidate would know that if he visited the election results on his own website. The denialism is completely absurd, but it's also completely Trumpian. Like Mike Lindell, he believes any vote against him is a rigged one. But Trump is the president of the United States, and he is already pushing the envelope. During Tuesday's balloting in Minneapolis, a city that is still reeling from Trump's ICE raids, federal election observers tried to talk their way into at least one polling place.
Jacob Mullis voted inside Powderhorn Recreation Center minutes before federal observers arrived. Perfect. An election judge came out to confirm who they were and make sure they stayed 100 feet from the building. Hennepin and Ramsey counties denied federal observers inside polling places, which is within the county's rights, so they had to be 100 feet outside.
And I can have signage to where 100 feet is.
I have it. Do you want me to go?
Yeah,
grab
that'd be
it?
great.
I'll be right back. Good on her. And that could be just the beginning. This week, newly confirmed Attorney General and former Trump criminal defense lawyer Todd Blanche said the next federal election observers could be armed ICE agents.
Now, when it comes to ICE officers, you recently expressed some support to deploy them to polling locations, armed federal officers. Now, how do you reconcile that with, obviously, the federal law that prohibits federal law enforcement to be armed at these locations?
If you're here illegally, you are not allowed to vote. So I also am not sure of the uproar of the risk of having a border patrol or an ICE agent at a polling location or looking into whether somebody is voting that shouldn't be. If you are here illegally, you cannot vote. And
So then there shouldn't be any need for the ICE agents to be there, right?
The risk is voter intimidation, Todd Blanche.
Yes.
And it is all happening because Donald Trump wants it to happen.
Yep.
Big lie. The insurrection says he wants to nationalize elections and he regrets not seizing voting machines by force in 2020. It's all part of his larger agenda. The agenda to stop the will of the people, to stop you from stopping him.
Yep.
Gerrymandering, to waging war on mail-in balloting, to suggesting this week that maybe he just has the power to make up new voting.
If you declare a national security emergency as the President of the United States, they can't challenge it. It can only be overturned by a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress. So if you do this in the next month, we will get photo ID, proof of citizenship, and a limit to mail-in ballots. And
let me say this statement that I was in a plan.
Just FYI, what Wayne Root, that guy, said there is not true. The president can't do that. It is unconstitutional. But what he does have is a core of Republican allies dedicated to his vision. Some of them have their own races to run in November. All of them appear ready to overturn the will of the voters if, and only if, the voters decide to reject them. Mark Elias is the founder of Democracy Docket and a voting rights attorney who has been fighting Trump's election suppression efforts for years, and he joins me now. Mark, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you.
Wow. We heard Todd Blanche to try to explain away armed federal agents, ICE agents at polling places as a normal thing that nobody should question. Is it feeling to you increasingly likely that that's what we're going to see in November at this point?
So first of all, Donald Trump oftentimes complained that he didn't have the Roy Cohn. He got his Roy Cohn, right? I mean, like Todd Blanche is willing to do things that even Pam Bondi would. Certainly things that in the first Trump administration that Jeff Sessions wouldn't do, that others wouldn't do. And so he's got his Roy Cohn. Is it where we're going? I think it is on the ladder of things we are doing, right? Like Donald Trump has a pattern that we have seen before. He starts with lies. Those lies then wind up going to court. And that's the phase we're in right now. Right now, my law firm and I, we have handed him 21 defeats in cases in which they're trying to get access to state voter files. They have not won a single case. Not one. Zero. Okay. Now, they are also trying to commandeer the Postal Service now to get access to this voter information. And they are losing those cases. There's a pending appeal before the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll wait for that. Here is the deal, though. When Donald Trump is done losing in court, then he escalates to violence. Now, in 2020, we saw that as January 6th in 2021. But we may see it as state actors, right? I mean, we may see it with CPD. We may see it with ICE. We may see it with the pardoned vigilantes that are inspired by him who, he pardoned and now wants to put money in their pocket. So we need to be prepared for all of the above. We have to be prepared for what we can deal with before the election to make it so that people can vote. We have to be ready to deal with it after election when Donald Trump tries to subvert the outcome. And we need to make sure that the public is aware that this is part of an overall plan that Donald Trump has.
Well, they already sent election observers into Minnesota, and we saw that again, this is why I love poll workers so much. Oftentimes with their volunteers, they have other gigs. This is not what they do as their full-time job, but you saw exactly that she knew the rules and regulations of what goes down and who is allowed inside and outside of polling places. In Minnesota, they did the same thing, by the way, in Michigan, where I was last week, and I talked to Mr. Baxter, who was the COO of elections in Detroit, in the city, because that municipality deals with their elections, not the county as a whole when it comes to counting. He said they didn't, identify themselves as to who they were, didn't know whether they were lawyers or whatever. How prepared, when we talk about the federal overreach of them just showing up at places like this, are other states for this? Because Mr. Baxter knew what to do, that polling place worker knew what to do. Are you confident that election workers, administrators throughout the country understand that they don't have to participate in this?
So look, this is where, I depart from some of the happy talk that you sometimes get. There is a tendency for everyone to want to say, well, don't worry, the poll workers will take care of it. Well, here's two problems for you. The first is that it's a lot to ask poll workers to stand up to the federal government. It's one thing if it's a bunch of guys in polo shirts like that, we're jokers looking to, maybe cause a little bit of a disruption, but otherwise fine. But let's imagine it's not that. Let's imagine it's ICE agents with guns, right? Let's imagine it is people with much more aggressive tactics, right? It's a lot to put on the poll workers. But here's the second problem, and I need everyone to pay attention to this. There are a lot of like Tina Peters was an election official. Republicans have been putting in key positions in key states and counties around this country election deniers. The election deniers are not just running for statewide offices. They're not just running for Secretary of State. They're running or being placed in these local election officials as well. So do I think that in Minneapolis we're in good shape? Yes. But what happens when you are in a state like Texas or in a state like Florida, where, the Republican Party sort of runs the state government, but also has infiltrated at a MAGA level into a lot of these local county positions? And that is where I worry that it isn't going to just be election officials standing up to the federal government. Remember, I mentioned we have won 21 cases. There were 20 states that turned it over voluntarily, and those are the places I am in some ways more with.
Yeah, that is terrifying. And then you have candidates like Mike Lindell, who, it is bonkers to still think about that this guy has refused.
Birch beef tallow bomb went viral. The knockoffs are everywhere. Listen, if the label says that's not a...
As refusing to concede. Compare that to Francesca Hong, by the way, the Democratic candidate for Wisconsin governor. She lost the primary, the progressive candidate, despite leading in the polls there. She conceded right away. How many more Mike Lindells do you believe we'll see in November? Republicans who lose but pretend like they don't lose.
Okay, so here's the deal. They're all Mike Lindells. I have a site called Democracy.get. We cover all these elections results. Mike Rogers is a Mike Lindell. Mike Rogers is a more dressed up, respectable version. But Mike Rogers is not a somehow non-MAGA Republican. Mike Rogers has bought into the election denialism in the same way that every other Republican has. And so we need to stop looking for heroes among the Republican candidates. There are no heroes. There's proud MAGA and scared MAGA. And they all are MAGA in the end. And so they will all try to subvert the outcome of free and fair elections. They are all on board with what Donald Trump is saying and lying about every single day. And we cannot give any of them the benefit of the doubt.
And they're coming at this, Mark, from all directions. And today, the Trump administration lawyers, they filed this request asking the Supreme Court to lift a second injunction against this executive order that was targeting vote by mail. Can you explain to us what the outlook is there? What are the stakes for voters in this case?
Yeah, so Donald Trump put in place an executive order, tried to put in place an executive order last year to take over voting. We sued, others sued, we won, and that was blocked. Then this year, he putting forward another executive order, and in some ways it's much more audacious, because what it seeks to do is to commandeer the U.S. Postal Service to require states to provide that voter data that we're beating them in court on when they're trying to go to the states, try to get the states to have to turn over to the Postal Service, or else the Postal Service, wait for it, won't deliver you a mail-in ballot. Wow. So that has now been challenged in court, and the first of those cases to get to the Supreme Court, it was a case brought by Democratic attorneys general, and they wanted the trial court, they wanted the Court of Appeals, and the administration is asking the Supreme Court to set that aside. We are all waiting now to hear what the Supreme Court says, but here is my message. If you look at what the Trump administration is saying, they are not saying that the Supreme Court should rule their way because Donald Trump was right. They're not saying that the Supreme Court should rule our way because this was constitutional. Oh, no. They're arguing it's not right. That, like maybe the Postal Service will just tell to Donald Trump, no, we're not going to do it. Maybe Todd Blanche will say, Mr. President, on this voting thing, we're not going along with you. Maybe Mark-Wayne Mullins at DHS will say, I don't care what the executive order is, I'm going to do the right thing by the American people. And so because of that possibility, the Department of Justice is telling the Supreme Court, you know what, Your Honor, there's nothing to rule on yet.
It's unbelievable, and it's why I think you are so right. You can't just rely on the polling place workers. You can't just rely on the lawyers. You can't just rely on other elected officials or election ministers who have been at this for years. I think it's an all-hands-on-deck, red alert, Mayday situation, and Mark Elias, you're always on top of it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Coming up, newly minted Minnesota Democratic Senate nominee Peggy Flanagan on her push to dismantle ICE. That's coming up next. Progressive Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan won a decisive victory in her state's Democratic Senate primary. She defeated her establishment-backed opponent, Congresswoman Angie Craig, by 20 points. Look at that. Flanagan ran in part on a platform of what she called, specifically, ripping apart ICE, which, as you know, terrorized the streets of Minnesota this winter. I was there. I covered the surge. I saw it with my own eyes. And the fallout, too, from federal immigration agents absolutely menacing communities. They arrested American citizens. They killed 2. Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And during her victory speech last night, Flanagan vowed to fight Trump's draconian immigration overreach should voters send her to Washington in November.
Let's talk about Donald Trump's out-of-control ICE force. We need to rip ICE apart and stop them from terrorizing our communities. And I know this. I know that we can fix our broken immigration system, secure the border, and create a real pathway to citizenship that aligns with our values.
And Peggy Flanagan joins me now. First of all, congratulations. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
You got it. The polls, it was amazing, showed a very tight race, but you ended up winning by about 20 points. You must be feeling great.
We feel pretty good. I am running on adrenaline, caffeine, and a tremendous amount of gratitude for Minnesotans. But we had a grassroots, people-powered campaign, and I think that's why we won.
You have this platform of ripping apart, are the words that you use, and replacing ICE. And your opponent in this primary did not use that type of language. Do you believe that was a decisive issue in the race?
Well, I think, what we heard from Minnesotans is that this was really an issue of judgment. My opponent was the only Minnesota Democrat to vote for Donald Trump's immigration bill, the Lake and Riley Act, which, I think really gave the green light for the just chaos and cruelty that we saw here in the streets in Minneapolis. And, I know that the economic impact, the trauma, especially for our children, and the loss of 2 Minnesotans, people are continuing to carry that, even if the national media has moved on. And the biggest thing, I think, and I know that you saw it here when you were on the ground, is that Minnesotans showed up for each other. We demonstrated that we are powerful in the face of Donald Trump, and I think that mobilized a lot of people to get engaged and involved in this race.
I'm curious about the language you use specifically. You say rip apart ICE, but I think you pointedly avoided using the phrase abolish ICE. Is there a distinction there for you?
Well, I think for me, it is pretty clear that we have a completely broken system that right now is functioning as a, private police force for Donald Trump that's been allowed to kill people with impunity. When we see that $240 billion has been given to this agency to just roam our streets and terrorize people, it's outrageous. I think that we, need an immigration system where we have secure borders that's grounded in safety for the public, dignity, and, ultimately that we have a pathway to citizenship for folks who are here, our neighbors and people who are part of the fabric of Minnesota. We can do so much better. And when we see how much money is being spent right now to terrorize communities, while simultaneously ripping healthcare away from people, taking literal food off the table, and just the grift under Donald Trump, I think it is a chaotic storm that simply empowers Donald Trump and makes communities less safe and more unstable when it comes to families who are just trying to get by.
I asked that question because I wonder if ICE, and you say we need an immigration system, and obviously there has to be something, but is ICE a part of that for you? Because every component part of the Department of Homeland Security has a different role, and you've got Customs and Border Protection, which you can see at the airports and at ports of entry, and then you've got the Border Patrol, which is down along the line along the border, and up on our coast in many places, and on the northern border, and then ICE is doing these interior enforcement operations, very specifically in running the detention center system, which is the biggest. You got more people in custody than ever before. Will ICE be a part of the immigration enforcement apparatus if you have your way?
I mean, I think we need immigration enforcement, but it shouldn't be ICE, especially under this, administration, as you said, right? That we have 11 people who have been killed, including 2 Minnesotans. We also see, over 50 people have died while in detention as Donald Trump has been in office for the last year and a half. It's horrific. And, this continues to be, I think, an important issue in this race going forward because, my opponent, Michelle Tafoya, used footage of ICE terrorizing our communities in her launch video, and then went on to say that ICE treated kids, quote, really, really well. Tell that to Liam Conejo Ramos and right. the kids who've been in detention or who've been separated from their parents. It's completely broken, and we have to start over.
There's no doubt about that. I think I was in Columbia Heights the day that he was taken. The apparatus continues to try to find, the administration, new ways to do this enforcement. And now the Trump administration is reportedly going to spend millions to arm ICE agents with what are effectively taser gloves. It sounds crazy, but for context, here's how one company demonstrated these gloves on a deputy. They're also saying that ICE will only release, by the way, body-worn camera footage when it's in the agency's best interests. Taser gloves. We saw Greg Bavino and his agents throwing chemical agents or smoke grenades, flashbangs on the streets of Minneapolis. Now we look at these things. Taser gloves almost sounds crazy to say. What type of an escalation does this feel like to you? If you feel that way.
If you ever wanted your own custom figurine, his website lets you create your own custom figurine in many different styles. You just upload your photo or describe your idea. And it first generates a preview of how your figurine could look like, and then it turns it into a full 3D model that you can rotate and fully customize. You can keep changing the prompts, adding more photos, and tweaking the design until it looks exactly how you want. Once you're happy with it, you can order it, and a few days later...
I mean, it's horrific, right? These are like torturous devices, and the fact that they'll only release body cam footage when it is helpful to them, come on. And I would say this, right? In Minnesota, our state patrol, they wear body cams. It is for their safety and the safety of Minnesotans. And that should be, frankly, the minimum that we should expect from these federal agents. And this is an issue, I think, that doesn't just speak to Democrats. It speaks to, Republicans, independents, and people who just, believe that we shouldn't, have a group of frankly, this lawless entity roaming our streets, causing terror. It is meant to intimidate and frighten people. It certainly does not make us more safe. And we saw that here when, and as a member of the American Indian community, the Native community, we literally had Native folks being stopped, detained, and people started wearing their tribal IDs around their necks because it was all about if you were, a person of color, if you were black and brown, they were going to detain you. Like, it is totally broken. America should be outraged, and I cannot believe that they are spending money on this when we are told that there is not enough money, right, to feed kids or seniors or make sure that people have access to health care. It's insulting, it's disgusting, and we need to hold this administration accountable, and we're going to do it.
Here. There's a reason that the Republican-appointed judge who stopped the family separation policy back in 2018 said it shocked the conscience. That is exactly what it did, and it's not hard for anybody to see that. You don't have to be on the streets of Minneapolis like I happened to be where you were. All you got to do is open your eyes. Minnesota Democratic Senate nominee Peggy Flanagan, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Still ahead, new reporting on Trump's decoy plane stunt that put several members of his own cabinet at risk. That's next. All right, we're learning that when Donald Trump snuck off Air Force One in a catering truck last month, turns out he wasn't alone. The Washington Post reports the Deputy Chief of Staff, Dan Scavino, Executive Assistant and Trump's, quote, human printer, Natalie Harp, and also the Director of Oval Office Operations, Walt Nauta, all joined Trump inside that catering truck, headed for a separate plane, while the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, flight using the plane's external space. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent were sent on the decoy flight, along with Policy Advisor Stephen Miller, Communications Director Stephen Chung. Oh, and the White House press corps, who thought and reported that Donald Trump was on board with them. But they all very well may have been in some serious danger. U.S. officials told the New York Times that there were multiple streams of information on potential threats, including someone in the vicinity of the NATO summit spotted with a shoulder-fire missile. However, there is new reporting from the Washington Post that the CIA was skeptical of the threat before putting Donald Trump on that secret flight. One U.S. official said, quote, the reports of threats against Donald Trump's life Israeli derived, not U.S. generated, and they were viewed as low confidence. Last night, reporters pressed Donald Trump on his deceptive maneuver.
They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
Why did they want me to do that?
I guess there was a threat out there. I didn't really ask them much about it. I get a lot of threats.
Why was it too dangerous for you to fly on Air Force One?
Well, I don't know. I think actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk. I think it was at greater risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for.
You gotta be kidding. With all of this new information coming out about this incident, journalist Garrett Graff details this. The Russian nesting dolls of scandal within the Air Force One scandal. The scandals within scandals within scandals, including corner cutting on presidential security, an attack on freedom of the press, and the ongoing risk of Trump's war with Iran. Quote, this isn't a laughable operation to sneak away from the press in a catering truck. This was high-stakes presidential gamble with global stability and nuclear war hanging in the balance that indicates anew how much Trump's ego and corruption undermines our security at home and abroad. Garrett Graff is the author of the Doomsday Scenario newsletter, and he joins me now. Garrett, you called this, and I love this, a Russian nesting doll of scandals. So let's start with the outer shell of the scandals within scandals and scandals, the Qatari jet. Go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's important to remember why we ended up in a situation where Donald Trump was trying to scramble to get air transport out of the NATO summit in Turkey. And that begins with his acceptance of this wholly inappropriate $500 million Qatari 747 that he wants from the royal family, that he accepted last year, that may or may not be coming with him to his presidential foundation and museum, that he had the Air Force retrofit and repaint to become his new Air Force One, his new presidential plane that was debuted months earlier than it could possibly be securely fitted. to fly to this NATO summit at the beginning of July. And what we now understand is that that plane lacked some of the basic defensive capabilities that are normally part of the presidential fleet, which is how you end up with the president trying to leave Turkey aboard what was then the backup jet, this long-standing blue and white 747, traditionally known as Air Force One.
Right after he got back from Turkey, he wrote on social media about a standing, what's called dead man switch order that he left to decimate Iran, in his words, potentially a reference to nuclear missiles. How seriously should we take that? How dangerous could that make the president's international travel for not just the people on board that old Air Force One, but everybody?
Dramatically expanding racing at the fairgrounds?
Nashville expanding racing at the fairgrounds?
Yeah, and this is sort of one of the parts of this story that I think we're better understanding only in hindsight. I mean, there is so much in Trump's presidency that is sort of weird in real time, that why it's weird and what its significance ends up being really only comes apparent as future details are known. This is a situation where we now understand that there was what the military and the Secret Service took very seriously as a threat, leaving Turkey. And the president comes home after this decoy flight, which again, we didn't know about at the time, and makes this very weird weekend oblique reference to the idea that there are thousands of American nuclear missiles on standby in the event that something happens to him. And now we can understand that that was a threat and potentially a conversation that Donald Trump had had as part of this Iranian threat upon his departure from Turkey.
The next layer down is an obvious one about attacks on freedom of the press, and that really ramped up, like we're talking about, the nuclear threat after the flight. What does it mean for the government to go after journalists, go after former officials over legitimate news stories? I mean, I sat with Maggie Haberman in the days after this happened, and those subpoenas came. Subpoenas have come before, but not with the speed that they came in the wake of this story coming out.
Exactly, and again, this is something that we have a much better understanding of now. That when Trump comes back, there's a lot of weirdness about why he was on this backup 747, or at least that we thought that he was on this backup 747 at the time. Comes back, the New York Times breaks the news that there was this potential threat and that the new Qatari jet lacked defensive capabilities. That throws the White House into a spiral. You see this very strange and I think it's fair to say unprecedented, urgent leak investigation unfold, where FBI Director Kash Patel is pulled off of a weekend junket to Chicago.
Brought to the White House, right?
A war room. Brought to the White House, set up a war room with White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and they end up subpoenaing the New York Times journalists who made this original reporting, and then ends up sort of falling apart in this very shambolic and embarrassing series of court proceedings where the government is forced to admit that it had actually not pursued any other investigative avenues prior to subpoenaing a journalist, as U.S. policy is supposed to have them do.
It's also extraordinary, and it's also very serious and consequential. And Garrett Graff, you have broken it down like nobody else that I have seen. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's a very weird story, and it's a lot more troubling than I think a lot of people are understanding.
There's no doubt about that. Thank you again. Still to come, everybody. 83 days to go until Election Day. Donald Trump's economy just set a new record. It ain't the good kind, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get into it next. It's no secret to you, I'm sure, that the price of gas has been above $4 a gallon for much of the time that Donald Trump launched his senseless war on Iran. But here's something you might not know. The national average is now at its highest ever this late in the calendar year, according to the Gas Buddy data. The price of gas has never been above $4 a gallon after August 12th in any previous year ever. And while we're all paying for Donald Trump's disinterest in affordable gas, we just learned today that the cost of Donald Trump's new ballroom and all the related projects has soared to at least $900 million. Let me say that one more time.
The ballroom that was supposed to be paid by private donors, by the way.
That is more than 4 times what the White House initially said that the ballroom was going to cost. He's spending hundreds of millions
Even
of
Donald
dollars
Trump's
on
lies
this
are
gaudy,
dishonest.
gold, nasty-looking ballroom, while Americans struggle to cover the cost of gas. That is why his poll numbers are sinking even lower, and it is also a huge reason why progressive candidates are making such a strong showing in Democratic primaries across the country. Max Rose is a former Democratic congressman from New York, and Michelle Goldberg is an opinion columnist for the New York Times, and they both join me now. Good to see you both. Michelle, let's start with you. What did you think about what happened in Minnesota and Wisconsin last night?
Well, look, I mean, I think that the Democratic base is extremely restive and angry at a leadership that feels like hasn't fought hard enough and desperate for new blood. And also there are kind of is still concerned, I think, about electability in a way that, say, the Tea Party never was. Because the Tea Party always had this conviction that they represented a silent majority. And I think there's a lot of Democrats who know better. So you saw, people were very excited for in Wisconsin, but when she started kind of going on TV and saying things that I think people realized were going to be a problem in the general election, they pivoted quickly. The fact that she did as well as she did, though, I think still shows that there is a huge hunger for really bold leaders in the party.
What did you make of the polling discrepancies particularly in the Hong election?
Everyone's full of it. But we got to keep paying these consultants, though. I mean, they need to put food on the table, so it's okay.
Is that what it boils down to?
Yeah, it is what it boils down to, because in a primary, you really can't predict turnout. And I think you can't get people on the phone anymore. I don't think that this is a base versus middle issue any longer. I really don't. I think this is a matter of energy in the party writ large. Yeah, of course, we're always going to look to establish someone's here, someone's there. People are angry at the Trump administration, and they're eager and excited to vote in a primary, and that is an indicator of just one thing, that they will be eager and excited to vote in the general election and unseat Republicans.
That's certainly what, when I was in Michigan last week, what people were saying to me, other than like a couple of young voters who were saying that if Sayed didn't win, they would cross over and vote, they might stay out entirely. Would you buy into this whole Democratic fissures?
Thunderbolt Hall lightning has killed grown men at once. I caught it with my bare hands.
Fissures going to hurt the Democrats in November, or are you with Max that they're all going to come out no matter what?
I mean, I wouldn't say all, but I actually think, both in both of these cases where you've had the candidate who loses, the moderate in Michigan and the more leftist candidate in Wisconsin, they've been so graceful and have tried so hard to unify the party. And I think that is going to really, really matter.
I think they have to. The Connecticut race is so interesting to me because, Max, you're still a senior advisor to both Democrats, right? Yeah. And you supported Luke Ron, it was the Connecticut Democrat who won in the primary against John Larson, who's been in Congress for 28 years. What went down there?
By the way, an extraordinary career that he had, but I think the case of Luke speaks to exactly what we're talking about here. He is going to be a phenomenal member of Congress and has lived a phenomenal life of public service in uniform as well as a mayor. But this anti-incumbency, anti-establishment fervor and energy in the party knows no ideological boundaries. As we look at Luke, we're also equally excited and in admiring the energy that we saw in Rebecca Bennett's primary in New Jersey, that we see in Kate Connolly's primary and election against Mike Lawler in upstate New York, that we see with Turek in Iowa. It is all the same consistent story. So yeah, a couple people get sick in Michigan, Said loses. A couple people get sick in Wisconsin, and the other person wins. And none of that matters. What matters is the energy is equally felt amongst moderates as well as people that consider themselves more on the left.
It got spicy in that race, Michelle, and the Working Families Party, they ran ads for Larson that attacked Ron, and they call him a corporate Democrat, is what they called him. Does that tell us anything about about anything in these races and the dynamic between the young and the old candidates? And what do you make of all that?
Well, look, I think that people feel like whether you call it the establishment or corporate Democrats, people feel like the kind of political structures that they've lived with have failed them, right? Have kind of manifestly failed them. And, in some cases, often they feel like they haven't fought hard enough either because they're cross-pressured by their donors. I mean, that's the argument that you hear Abdul make, or else that they're just accustomed to a different way of doing politics that's not as sort of smash mouth as what we have now. And so there's just kind of a desperation for people who can both, I think, represent the gravity of the crisis, but also communicate in a modern media environment.
I was in the subway today filming for my show this weekend. I was talking to people about the idea of the MTA. They're floating the idea of raising the fare to get on the subway again here in New York, both on the bus and on the subway. And all of us, as soon as you say that, people start talking about how bad the economy is and how expensive everything is, from a gallon of milk to whatever. How much are costs in the economy, not just in New York, I mean, in Staten Island in particular, but how much are costs in the economy going to be the central role? We keep hearing about affordability. Donald Trump keeps trying to dismiss it.
Well, and first of all, to the point that you were making earlier, it's interesting to note in Bronin's race, he was called the corporate Democrat and he won by more than 20 points here. So again, this energy knows no ideological bounds here. I think what separates this affordability crisis is really two things. The first is at this point is directly caused by the Trump administration. Can't blame the prior administration, and they're the ones engaging in a reckless, unneeded, unconstitutional, unplanned war that has direct causality.
Look at the gas, with that data about the gas
prices. It's on them. Their fingerprints are all over it. The other element about this affordability crisis is that it is really not something that only one could say that the working class or the poor are feeling. This is something that is bleeding deep into the middle class, into folks that under another economy, we would say, you have no worries. Let's just talk about actually serving those most in need. That has fundamentally changed our politics. And I think you're seeing this in Democrats now calling for policies that are universal in nature, because everyone is seeing an urgent need for government help.
How much is it driving the success of the Democrats? For me, everywhere I go, everybody that I talk to says that the reasons that they're so fired up is that it's so, I only have 15 seconds up, but it's so hard to afford anything at this point.
I mean, look, I think what's driving the success of the Democrats is the utter catastrophe of Donald Trump's presidency more than anything.
Yeah. All right. Michelle Goldberg, Max Rose, thank you both so much for being here. Appreciate it. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
Stay tuned, everybody, because in just a few minutes, Georgia Senator John Ossoff will join Jen Psaki for a very new, in-depth, exclusive interview. You are not going to want to miss.
Almost. Nothing good ever ends with almost, and neither should you. That's why we created Blue Chew Gold, the ultimate 4-in-1 formula. With some
around these nominees. Now let's take a look at the top of the show at how it unfolded in real time across the primary election night.
It is election night in America once again.
The Associated Press has just projected that Amy Klobuchar will be the Democratic candidate for governor.
Darling Brown will advance to a runoff. This is a very emotional night. Wisconsin, we have built something that will change politics forever.
I'm not going to try to give up this race until the votes are counted. That's nonsense.
This campaign was about the many versus the money.
Tom Tiffany stood with those who tried to overturn a free and fair presidential election instead of defending our democracy.
Well, guess what? The many just won.
There you go. You kind of get a little excited. Feel like people really voting, things are happening. I can tell you a lot of Democrats were studying the Wisconsin governor's primary, where voters made David Crowley the Democratic nominee. Now, he's a 40-year-old city official, a member of the ACLU and NAACP, who in most years might seem like a pretty standard Democratic option. But as these year's primaries have featured energized and often victorious Democratic socialists, Crowley's new win after trailing in the polls is being covered by some as a kind of rebuttal to the left, a stunning loss for his more liberal opponent, as the Times put it today. Now, that is ideology. On electability, nonpartisan experts view Crowley as the stronger choice for the Democrats to win, one forecaster shifting that race to the Democrats now that Crowley is the nominee. He had trailed by many points in some polls, and some in the political media are rushing to argue this must be a wider trend. Axios interprets the race as a sign that socialist fever is breaking, that the center-left wing of the party could make a comeback now. Well, many of those reactions are basically narratives hunting for data. You know, I keep it real with you here on the beat, at least I try to. And the fact is, we won't know much about what all national voters want in the midterms until the midterms are held this November. What we know about Democratic primaries is there is at least now room, and certainly a receptive sort of public mindset within Democratic voters, for economic populists and for actual Democratic socialists. Voters just show that in Michigan, which is not exactly left in Vermont or California generally. And if you just broaden out even beyond our certain kind of MAGA-infested era, 20 years ago, New York was run by a centrist billionaire, known above all else for his business career. Today it's run by a Democratic socialist. Just as New York's district crossing the Bronx and Queens, which is kind of a working-class Democratic enclave, was then, 20 years ago, led by the establishment Democrat Joe Crowley. Now it's repped by the most prominent Democratic socialist in Congress, AOC. That were once almost disqualifying among Democrats in most part of the country are certainly now allowed. They're on the table. Sometimes they are rewarded. Now, even as Wisconsin Democrats swung back to this traditional option last night, their nominee will face Tom Tiffany, a MAGA Republican who voted in Congress against certifying Joe Biden's win, the same day that MAGA fans infamously stormed the Capitol in their crime spree. And I mentioned that because that mainlining of the anti-democracy movement from legal steps, in other words, members of Congress can vote to overturn an election and vote not to certify what their own constituents did. That is a legal option, albeit anti-democratic. There are also, of course, the related MAGA criminal plots to pursue that same effort, overthrowing elections by force. Now, that was on display last night and today because the fringe Trump ally Mike Lindell, who runs the company MyPillow, lost in Minnesota but won't concede. He's complaining about vague irregularities, but he's stoking division among Republicans because this was his primary loss. The GOP again is finding that Trump's playbook may begin by targeting certain liberal opponents, but it is soon deployed against fellow Republicans.
The love, not the hurt. Fuzzy. Changing things, stranger things, everything. Designs for anything you love on anything you love it on. Redbubble. Game of Thrones, Dragonfly.
And it's soon deployed against fellow Republicans. It is one of the obvious and yet slowly learned lessons of this MAGA era. Just as Trump's DOJ abuse, which we're documenting here, also includes targeting Republicans on the Fed, all the way out to his own former cabinet officials. As for the politics, Lindell's loss is the third for Trump endorsees in just the last 2 weeks alone. So that's a lot to chew on, but we have some politically hungry guests here at the table. Molly John Fast, review writer with the New York Times, MSNBC analyst, host of the Fast Politics podcast, and Sam Sear, political commentator who hosts the very popular Majority Report on YouTube. It's netted over 1 billion views, and he's interviewed major people like the Congresswoman I just mentioned, AOC, Senator Bernie Sanders, who we have today. You can see him right there. Sam is actually interesting, as someone that a lot of reviewers know from being around what you might call the liberal media, if you will. But you're also now a digital innovator at a time where some are waking up to the power of that. So I want to get into that with you. But Molly, let's start with what you did learn last night. Maybe not as much as the headlines say, but a time of Democratic unity, according to who's their
I really like that package you played at the beginning because I think that this is a narrative that is looking for facts, of framing that doesn't necessarily fit. And if you look at these candidates, what you see is voters maybe voted for candidate quality and voted for candidates they thought could win. It wasn't straight down ideological. Certainly they wanted candidates who were offering them something, who came out as fighters, but they weren't. I just think it's too simple. And in fact, the other thing that, that I think is really important when you look at the top lines of this primary is that in the Wisconsin primary, and I'm looking at these numbers are very notably, 791K approximately Democratic voters versus 490K Republican voters. So there was a big Democratic many more Democratic primary voters in Wisconsin, and in the Minnesota Senate primary, which is another one where you had multiple candidates on the ballot, but still, Democrats 697 versus GOP 406.
Yeah, Sam, I turn to you to transcend the narrative.
Sure.
Rather than succumb to it.
I actually think this narrative is pretty equal to transcend. Those numbers, I would add that Francesca Hong got the second largest amount of votes in a Democratic primary in the 20th century. The first, of course, being Crowley last. So I mean, the turnout was incredible. And I think the idea that this is somehow a resurgence of moderates, look, this is a very contested state. 3 or 4 elections short of Obama were decided by 30,000 votes in Biden's favor one time and Trump's a couple of times. And so I think the electorate is very sensitive to the idea of who can win, and I think that narrative took hold, where voters became more pundits than they did voting for what they necessarily wanted.
And in agreement for it, in addition to that, is it also possible that having 2 strong-viewed candidates brought out more people?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that's what happened. But I think there could have been some Republican crossover. But and I don't think Hong is necessarily a top tier performer as someone like Abdul Sayed is. But she's an amazing organizer, and what's built in that state now is an incredible infrastructure.
Which she referred to last night. Say a little more about that, because not everyone's in the weeds on this one.
The difference between when you talk about the so-called moderates and folks like DSA or economic moderates, they're winning with less money. I mean, race after race, they're winning or coming very, very close with less money. And that's because the nature of their politics is such that organizing and getting people involved is consistent with their ideology in a way that moderate politicians don't necessarily subscribe to. They get funding from outside sources. They get a lot more PAC money. They go up on TV more. But when you get politicians who are more oriented towards an economic populism, you see organizing on the ground. And that organizing doesn't go away. Right. That continues. So we're going to see down ballot victories in a state like Wisconsin 2 years from now, 4 years from now. We're going to see more and more, I think, whether it's DSA, whether it's, I think we're going to see a lot more of this. These organizations don't go away.
You're making a fair point. Also, they say, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Well, being an independent progressive who's critical of capitalism, whether that's DSA or a little less, is the mother of having to build a grassroots organization, because there's no out-of-state banks coming to help you.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's both necessity, but it's also it is almost essential to the ideology of their politics. So it's not just
all in the butt.
I would just add that Ben Whitler, like the state chair of Wisconsin, was very, very good. So it wasn't like it was starting from nothing. There was some infrastructure there that he had done. I mean, I agree, and what Hong has done is amazing. She did these huge town halls, and she had, a huge army of door knockers, which she has said she is now going to bring with her, which is the dream, which is the best any Democratic candidate can do for another. But I just think invented was
I want to jump in and show what Bernie was talking to you about, because you're in a newsworthy interview, okay? And as I mentioned, you got a lot of folks watching you online, you know, Democrats, some are late to this, trying to figure this out. You've been doing this. And Bernie was also talking about the anger, which isn't just at Trump. It is also at the whole broken system. Let's take a look at what you guys talk about.
Asian girls with good English and real intentions for a long-term relationship. Yes, we actually exist. If you're tired of games and
Also at the whole broken system. Let's take a look at what you guys talk about.
My thought, Sam, is that all over this country, and we're seeing this in New York City, New Jersey, Arizona, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Montana, etc., there is profound anger and disgust with status quo politics and status quo politicians. People want change.
Well, first off, I want to say, you see, I wore a sport coat for you tonight.
You dressed up.
I dressed up.
For the beat. We love it.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, this has been the case for, I think, a long time. And the anger, I think, is probably particularly in Trump, too. And there is a frustration with the Democratic establishment that they're not doing enough, both in fighting Trump, but I think more in the sense that you need to do something when you get in office that is going to have a lasting impact and is going to carry through. I mean, one of the things that Bernie and I talked about during that interview was, you know, we cut in half from years 21 to 22, cut it in half, 25%, because of the child tax credit, and then it just sort of melted away, and there was not enough, I think, outrage both by the Democrats, frankly by the media. I mean, that's ostensibly what when you're talking about child poverty, that seems like something that everybody should agree on, and the idea that we were able to have it in just a year is extraordinary. But it was never trumpeted. It was never, the outrage from it reversing was never expressed. And I think the idea is that Democrats, if they get the opportunity to lead again, they need to do lasting material benefits for people going forward. And frankly, that's what these democratic socialists are proposing. You know, really nothing more radical than we saw from Democrats during the New Deal through the following 30 years when Democrats controlled Congress.
Well, and isn't it funny, because if you say I'm an FDR Democrat or a New Deal Democrat, right, it hits a little different. Depending on where you are in the country, some of these terms scare people more or less. But when you talk about, yes, having an FDR posture towards regulating the banks before they invest in AI that bankrupts everybody, or actually fighting corruption, or actually getting a square meal and a square deal, you know, all the rest. I think it's a fair point. We appreciate, by the way, you put on your jacket.
Thank you.
You are, I've known you. Have I known you well? I know you. You are more liberal than you look. Well, you could be a St. Louis accountant, consultant, a dad, soccer coach. You're more liberal than you look.
Maybe in a parallel universe, I am.
Yeah? You're a country club Republican in a different timeline?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I dress a little bit conservatively growing up, I guess, in Worcester, Mass. But, no, I mean, I think, like, I would consider myself, of the left and, looking towards policies that are going to have a meaningful impact
that help people's lives. I get it. And you can do that. I'm out of time, but you can do that in a Brooks Brother take as much as anyone else. We salute. Jake. J. Crew. I'm out of time, Molly. We're going to continue this colloquy. My thanks to both of our special guests. We have more of the details that are leaking out about the decoy flight and this.
With everything going on in the world, Trump was like, just leave me in here. Okay, just leave me in. Let me know when the war is over.
Trump's vanity project building is costing more than he said it would. Surprise. We have a breakdown with an economist and looking at why people are still paying these high prices. Alex Wagner is here as well. We're back in 90 seconds. Of all of Trump's broken promises, one that has angered people the most this summer is the failure to stem high prices. You can see right here, how many essentials people are struggling to pay for, even as the rate of inflation is technically slowing. This war has spiked gas prices higher than ever at this point in the year. And another indicator of the pain is the hard data on how people just can't afford things anymore. Literally, meaning separate from polling, we see when we measure credit card debt, it's near record highs at over $1 trillion. And Trump, meanwhile, is spending $1 billion on his construction projects, taxpayers covering that despite his prior claims. It's a controversial set of economic priorities that doesn't sit well with the public.
The economy is driving me blind every step of the way.
The cost of living is absolutely insane. Feeding your kids should not feel this expensive.
Gas went up a whole dollar.
Gas prices finna to go up, so y'all need to work on your astral projections. You could just tell your boss, yo, I'm here at work, but in spirit.
America is struggling because of 2 words: Donald Trump.
That's what some people think. If you broaden out beyond what people are posting online, the data shows most disapprove of Trump's job performance. The new jobs report, meanwhile, shows the economy losing over 20,000 jobs. Over half of Americans feel that they're in an economy that is just getting worse. That percentage shows you that would include people who have voted for Trump before. So here we are, back to the fundamentals. If the economy is stupid, that's the James Carville maxim that politicians forget at their peril. It haunted Biden and Harris in the inflation election of 2024, and it is haunting Republicans now. And if this sounds a little repetitive, the rapper Lecrae put it, the reason why I sound the same is because the truth don't change. We're going to get into important truths.
It's all accepted that everything we do online is tracked. Every search, every click, every purchase is recorded somewhere. Most people don't even think about it. It's just the cost of using the internet, right? But it shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be. That's why Cloak is created. You generate these unique identities for anything you do online. So your real information stays private and you stay in control. It's simple. You can shop, sign up, and communicate all without being tracked. A world where people don't have to give up their privacy just to exist online.
After 25 years of marriage, my wife asked me to be the one to move out. The night I moved into my new apartment after the divorce, I sat on the floor because I didn't have any furniture yet and FaceTimed my brother just to hear a human voice. After we hung up, I caught my reflection in the black phone screen, and I genuinely didn't recognize myself. Exhausted eyes, gray skin, deep lines everywhere. I'm not gonna lie, I turned the phone face down and just sat in the dark. 25 years of marriage, 2 years of a brutal divorce, and a lifetime of stress had completely destroyed my face. I had deep wrinkles, sagging skin, and heavy exhausted bags under my eyes. I looked like a tired, weathered old uncle who was completely past his prime. Everyone in my life probably assumed that apartment was where I was going to slowly disappear, but I refused to disappear. I knew I needed to fix my face fast. I needed to look sharp, attractive, and energized again. And I did it. Look at this. This was me after 1 week. This was me after 2 weeks. This was me after 3 weeks. And no, I didn't inject Botox into my forehead or use it.
It's because the truth don't change. We're going to get into important truths with Alex Wagner, who knows all about it. You know that bar, right, Alex?
Of course.
Of course. Next. We're back with MS Now business analyst Ron Insana, publisher of The Message of the Markets on Substack, and Alex Wagner, of course, political analyst with us, host of Runaway Country on Crooked Media. Everybody's busy. Alex, I said it's the economy stupid, and the reason why we sound the same is the truth don't change, because we're back to not only an economy election possibly, but a price election.
Yeah, specifically we have like a two-tier economy, one for the rich and one for low-income service workers, increasingly. There are, I think, 2 million American workers that have left the labor force since last November because people are essentially giving up on it. Wage growth is not keeping pace with inflation. There's a housing market crisis. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing upwards. And you have an administration that's not only does not have its eyes on the ball, but is doing everything it can to exacerbate an already bleak scenario for the average American voter. I mean, Donald Trump is imposing 50% tariffs on Canada that go into effect next week, which is going to disproportionately affect Canada's #1 trading partner, the state of Michigan, which, as you recall, is a crucial swing state. I mean, you'd think that this administration would at least be on the lookout for the voters they need to keep on their side of the ledger come November, but no. I mean, Donald Trump was telling the truth when he said he doesn't think about Americans' financial situations at all.
Ron?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what Alex said. And, on top of that, you have the war in Iran that is keeping oil prices, gasoline prices higher than they would otherwise be, still hovering around $4 a gallon. We're still in the middle of the summer driving season. And you have grocery prices that have yet to come down. And so really across the board, and I've been describing it this way for quite some time, we have a mini stagflationary environment. You've got inflation, generally speaking, even though today's numbers are relatively benign with respect to the rate of inflation slowing a little bit, prices are still well above where they were a year ago, about 3.5% on average. And then you've also got, as you mentioned earlier, the job market starting to weaken. We saw a negative print last month. It's possible we could see that again, and we could see further downward revisions in prior months.
Well, and I want to, Alex, Ron says we saw a negative print last month, and I thought, what's that mean?
I'm sorry. We lost jobs in the month of July, 23,000 of them. And so we can see that happen again. And if indeed the labor market deteriorates further while inflation, it continues to stay above the Fed's 2% target, you've got this kind of stagflationary environment. It's not the 70s where unemployment's 11%, inflation's 13%, rates are 20%, but it's still uncomfortable for everybody, particularly, as Alex pointed out, those at the lower end of the income distribution who are struggling to pay their bills and making choices.
And people feel it, and Alex, I only partly joke because Ron is like the Kornacki of the Labor Department statistics. We're happy to have somebody around.
Yeah, someone who knows what they're talking about, not just
who knows about negative print?
That's right.
Yeah, knows about negative print. And yet, you don't need to know the terms to be a voter who's facing this. And I'm curious, Alex, as a student of politics, we all kind of look at some of the same signals about whether this sort of prototypical distraction, promotion, and sometimes outright divisive hate playbook of the GOP can really distract people away from what we just saw is happening this summer, what they're living through.
Yeah, there's a very specific reason Republican candidates and Republican electeds don't want to talk about the Trump economy. It's bad. So they've defaulted to race baiting, xenophobia, and Islamophobia in some specific cases. But, people vote on their lived experience. For better or for worse, I would say. I think it would be good for us as a society if we cared more about people who weren't like us. But nonetheless, the reality of American politics is, as James Carville said, it is the economy stupid because that's people's lived experience. And, as much as we talk about corruption and Trump and the White House ballroom costing $900 million footed by the American taxpayer, the reason that level of self-serving, malignant narcissism and corruption resonates is precisely because everyday Americans can't afford hamburger meat. And the Mad King in the White House is obsessed with gilding horse statues outside of the Lincoln Memorial in an extra coat of 14-karat gold. It's just completely detached from reality. And in that is an inherent cruelty that I think the essential question of fairness really resonates emotionally in a way that it hasn't even in previous election cycles.
And you said we should care about people who are not like us. Were you going for a subtle Kendrick reference there or not? I wasn't sure.
They are not like us. But I also, I think I would argue to you, Ari, that the numbers, Trump's approval rating, which is in the basement, should be even lower given what he's doing on immigration, which is so appalling and so un-American. But really the thing that is sinking him are the economic numbers. Now, that's understandable, but at the same time, all of it collectively should be having an even, I think, more dire impact on his approval ratings.
Well, so let me take that to Ron, because there's places where Trump isn't doing anything. He's not using the power of the presidency to directly go after high prices and inflationary gas prices. That's sort of clear. But he is doing a lot on immigration in a way that he promised would have an immediate effect of helping the American labor market. And so even apart from what Alex called the cruelty, what we see might be illegal stops, that's not working either the way they said it would.
No, in fact, with his tariffs, he promised the creation of manufacturing jobs. We lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs since Liberation Day last year. with respect to the outflow of immigrants, some 3 million have left the country either involuntarily or voluntarily. So it's the first time since 1935 we've had a net outflow of population in the United States, which is shrinking the size of the labor force, reducing what we call the labor force participation rate, the number of people who are in the workforce and actually working. And so you cannot have economic growth if your labor force is shrinking. It just doesn't happen that way. There are two big props for the economy right now that are keeping us effectively out of recession. Number one is the enormous amount of spending on artificial intelligence infrastructure, and the other is at the upper end of the income distribution, the upper end of the band, people are spending very freely because the stock market's near all-time highs.
So I want to then give you a challenge and then have Alex respond as the final word in the segment, which is when we hear about the K-shaped economy, can you explain it in English and why so many see it as a problem? And then Alex can perhaps give us the politics of that, because they don't.
Sure, it's free for U.S. Navy, made for the heroes who serve, or a gift for Navy veterans, personalized with rank and name, trusted and supported by over 80,000 veterans. Claim yours now.
Give us the politics of that, because they don't seem to be good for this Treasury Department.
So the K-shaped economy, which Treasury Professor said he was getting sick of hearing about, is one in which where if you're on the upside and you're doing well, upper income or extremely wealthy, you're spending freely, the gains in the economy are accruing to you. Those on the lower end of the income distribution are struggling either to maintain their spending or they're falling behind because wages are not keeping up with inflation. And so, and in addition to that, I would argue, and I haven't determined whether I'm writing a book about this yet, there's an E-shaped economy. You have the aristocracy, you have the upper middle, or that's the upper income, and then at the very bottom you have what we're building out right now, which is a permanent.
So let me bring it to Alex, because Ron not only stuck another letter, but a plug for a book he hasn't written yet.
Progressive. That's why he's Ron and Sana.
In Seattle, we call that lip stuff. Okay, but we love it. We welcome it. We honor it. Alex, you PK, letter of the day, Sesame Street, word of the day. What do you think, Alex, about the Treasury Secretary trying to insist? I mean, this is where you see the liberal critiques work. He's heard about it enough that he's trying to rebut it and insist this isn't a K-shaped economy just for the people at the very top, Alex.
I mean, it's delusional. When diesel is over $5 a gallon up and down the East Coast, people know and understand that. This is them going to the grocery store. This is them taking their kid to the doctor's office. This is them filling up the gas tank. It doesn't matter what Scott Bessent says. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump says. I mean, they can try and paper over this as much as they want, but the reality is the reality. And that's where I think Republicans are running into the cold, hard wall of financial reality for the vast majority of this country. The fact that Ron's talking about a permanent aristocracy and a permanent underclass tells you that we are kind of in the late stage end of times empire economy, which is not where America wants to be or should be, and the American people know it.
Yeah, very clearly put. Alex and Ron, thanks to both of you. I'll see you in a moment. When we come back, there's even more details about that decoy plane ride and who was left behind. The intrigue and reporting about that secret plane swap that President Trump executed under the protection of the Secret Service is continuing to stoke all kinds of national conversation. Trump was basically secretly taken off Air Force One to get out of Turkey, transplanted to a different plane in a catering truck, and this was all because of the war with Iran and a credible assassination threat. Now, the press was still reporting that Trump was on Air Force One. The press has since corrected that, given this new reporting and information. Part of this is serious, and we want everyone to be safe. Part of it has a kind of Baroque absurdity to it, and the late-night comics are weighing in. Punchlines here are one of those signs that this is a story that's broken through, because you can't laugh at that unless you've heard about it, and even if you're not into politics, everyone's heard about it. Also, to say the obvious, it's only a punchline, because thankfully nothing happened, and no one was in danger, let alone hurt. But the security operations are still under scrutiny, because whether it was a decision of the president or his closest aide in the Secret Service, what happened was they left a lot of people as unwitting decoys on the plane, and those journalists are asking for answers.
Why
Was it too dangerous for you to fly on Air Force One?
Well, I don't know. I think actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk. I think it was at greater risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for. That doesn't make sense unless the ruse failed, and you would argue that they're going after the president. It is true for all of us who ever get near these targets. When you're reporting on them or you're near them, you are part of what you might call the danger blast radius. Although you're not the target, they're in more danger. But again, that defense doesn't make a ton of sense unless the ruse didn't work. There are reports that someone in the vicinity of the NATO summit was spotted with a shoulder-fired missile. And the Iranians also knew specifically where Trump was staying in Turkey, including the floor of the building. That's according to 2 U.S. officials that the Times spoke with. Another expert says the president faced intelligence about assassination attempts serious enough that it led the service to take those security precautions no prior president has ever taken. Going on to write that a decoy plane, potential target for an Iranian assassination attempt, presumably this missile attack, while the president tried to depart from this territory of a NATO ally. All of this adding context to what Trump later said at the time. Because he says a lot of things that people react to. But now that we know about the seriousness of the threat and the precautions taken, consider that he told the Post that week, I've left instructions if anything happens to just literally bomb them, Iran, at levels they've never seen before. Many interpreted that at the time to be even potentially a nuclear threat. And if those orders were left in place, of course, that raises a lot of questions. Then there's a line of succession. You had figures in Trump's inner circle who were brought on that other, presumably safer plane, which is why they did it, but he left behind cabinet members, including one who is top in the line of succession. The Times noting the subterfuge that protected the president also may have made targets of dozens of others. Having left behind Rubio, who's the first cabinet member in the line of succession if, God forbid, something happened to others, like the president and vice president, the Treasury Secretary, and some aides. Meanwhile, Trump was able to take Dan Scavino, Natalie Hart, and Walt Nada, some of his personal aides, none of them, of course, in the line of succession. And so that means that even as some joke about this and others kind of just discuss it as a kind of a spy movie plot, there are serious questions about who is calling the shots and whether the security protocols and the line of succession are being taken into account on the very day when there was reportedly a credible risk to the president. We'll be right back.
This will defend. That's not just a motto. It's a life you live. This polo honors it. Your brand, your rank, your name, forever.
We'll be right back.
Can we just watch something already?
What is the password?
Wait, are we still using your brother's account?
What's going on? We are still making time to fall back today with two exciting guests who have a little bit in common. Ron and Sam, of course, longtime financial journalists. He's been over on our sister channel, CNBC. He's a senior business analyst for us, as he was earlier in the program, an expert on markets, business, and the wider economy, the author of several books, including another one he's done tonight before writing. And making his geek debut is Josh Flagg. He's a leader in real estate with reported billions in sales. He's been on your show for 20 seasons. Longer than not planned. $1 million listing LA. Let's take a look.
I'm meeting with somebody. I think that's her. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
What's
this
that?
is Carl. He's my baby.
It's a magical piece of history. Some idiot's going to buy it and probably bulldoze and put some pallets here. You're going to turn down $35 million worth of business and get a lost service. Hello? Hello? Okay, this is like an argument I accidentally no response.
Oh, great to have you both here.
Let's do
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's exciting.
Thank you.
Ron's been around the block, so we'll go to you first. What's on your fallback list?
My fallback list is AI wellness instructors. I mean, it's bad enough that there are folks out there, real folks out there, who push fraudulent items on television, infomercials, and on the internet, but to have AI avatars doing the same thing with unproven wellness tricks, treats, whatever, supplements that don't have FDA approval. I spent my whole time in college working in a vitamin store, and some of this just, completely frustrates me, because at the end of the day, there's so much out there that you should not be messing with. There's this move towards a whole host of new injectables that you can use that presumably improve your lifespan or improve your quality of your life, and it's getting completely out of control. And I think at some point it's got to stop, because it's just uninformed and potentially dangerous.
Yeah, people have to be on guard, especially people who, people busy living their lives. They're not all experts on how to use the internet and all these platforms. And you got people, sometimes they go on Facebook to look at a photo or a speed, and they think they're talking to a person or getting something, and they're getting tricked.
Yeah.
And we're back to where we started, which is Fountain of Youth. It's being sold through tech, but everybody wants to be young and beautiful. Why are you looking at me? Why are you
Look at me. That's why I was looking at you.
I don't take medication. I probably should, so I would probably,
Yeah, what would you take it for?
How much time do you have?
Josh, we loved looking at a little glimpse of your
The hell was that
life,
all?
which overlapped with your real life.
Yes.
You're done?
What's on your list here?
Let's start with reality TV agents that think that they're celebrities. When did it become the real estate agent was more important than the house that they're selling, or more important than anything else? Now you're probably thinking, well, what am I doing here? I'm here to seek, I'm asking, I'm here for help.
You want help?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
my
here.
wife's a real estate agent.
Oh, good.
Talk to her, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But this is true in a lot of fields, and you're saying the product, the work still has to lead. Even if you're well known in your field, the work has to lead.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one thing if, my social media or my, what I do on social media maybe, sells the properties. That's one thing. That's great. But, the agents that are promoting themselves rather than the properties, that's where it becomes difficult for me to understand. Like, here's an example. I just sold Diane Keaton's house. There was on the TMZ, and there's a picture of this renowned, esteemed actress, next to her property, and then there's a photo of me just as big. And I'm thinking, why are you putting part of this? I'm just brokering the deal. But today the agents have become it's become almost like they're celebrities in themselves.
So the obvious follow-up here is, have you and your reality TV genre, though, perhaps fed some of that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm 100% responsible for that.
Why don't you think it's gotten out of hand?
Yeah, I just think it's gotten out of hand.
Yeah, we've got an environment now where social media drives sales.
100%.
I mean, if you're not out there, if you're not known, if you're not branding yourself, aren't you at a competitive disadvantage in your field?
I don't know how many people are looking at my social media and buying a $20 million house off me. To be quite honest, they run on Zillow, they run on things. So yes, a bit later there's probably self-promotion, and the other bit.
Like, cool it. Like, this has gone too far, which is interesting coming from you. I know you got another fallback on the Smithsonian.
Yeah, I mean, I leave it alone. There's nothing wrong with it. It's been a phenomenal institution for so many years, and now it's being, dragged by the administration in a variety of different ways for having what's deemed inappropriate American history, when in fact, culturally, it's been quite accurate, whether you're talking about the Tuskegee Airmen, whether you're talking about the contributions of African Americans, Native Americans, and others, and all of that's being eliminated from the institution itself and either glossed over or rewritten.
It's nutty. And, before this, I did free speech and First Amendment law. And the rule of thumb is you add speech, you don't censor speech. So I could understand a new administration coming in and saying, hey, there's something that happened down here, we want to have another exhibit add. But the idea that they want to censor and control history for what? For today's political agenda?
Yeah, I mean, it's Orwellian in a certain sense. I mean, the stuff's going down the memory hole, and, our children should know the honest and true history of the country in which they grew up, and where amends should be made, it should be recognized, and not thrown away in such a way that it's hurtful to entire populations of individuals.
Orwell also interested in reality TV in his own way. That's a story for another day.
Big Brother screen?
Yeah, and what are they all throwing at me? Yeah.
What's I'm going to say?
What else is on your fallback list, Josh?
Restaurants. QR codes and the fees that they charge you ahead of time, just in case it's a no-show. Right.
You want that to fall back?
Well, I think so, yes. First of all, what if I'm 95 years old and I don't have a telephone? How am I supposed to read the menu?
Yeah. Or you left your phone at home because an AI wellness doctor told you that you needed a screen.
By the way, COVID's been over for a few years.
It does.
The menu.
I gotta tell, I think the QR codes are kind of madness.
I can't stand them.
And it's like, we go out Restaurants aren't just a food experience, they're a social experience. And they're asking us to get right back on our phones.
So who's taking the time to open up their phone, click a photo? Like, isn't it a lot easier just to open up the menu?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah. But also it's a decrease in service, isn't it really, at the end of the day?
Well, that's obviously why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Less fair. But then even more important is I cannot stand, you call up ahead of time, you give them your credit card, you say 4 people are coming for dinner, and then they charge your credit card ahead of time so that in case there's a no-show. Okay, so I go into a restaurant the other day, right? A reservation for 4 people. So someone got sick, and there was 3 of us there. Okay, they don't have triangle tables, so you have a square top, 4 people, 4 chairs. They charged my card for 4 people, only those 3 people showed up. I said, well, did we cause any losses in revenue tonight? Was there an issue? And they went, no, we'll be charging for 4 people. So I have an issue with that. I think the point is to charge 1 fee to no show for the party. I get it. We lost revenue.
Can I tell you something? This is why we have fallback. The top of the show, some bigger things, but these are also things. These are small things.
These are this is what keeps me up at night.
They're legitimate gripes, let's put it. But they're part of the social fabric, absolutely, of any community, and especially with the runaway stuff. I think you make fair points. A reality star who says first, heal thyself. Thank you for being here, Josh. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Ron. And more than one segment, thank you.
How do you stop when there's one right there to
you can come meet Rachel and get
And
a
it's
special
AI
inside look at what's
sometimes.
happening in Texas, where Democrats are surprisingly tied. I'll explain next. Midterms, Democrats have even pulled even in Texas, where James Tallarico is punching above his weight. He just spoke to Lawrence.
Texans are drowning. And it's because for 50 years that puppet politicians like Ken Paxton have been rigging this economy in favor of their billionaire mega donors at our expenses. And I think that should end this November as Texans face this very important choice.
That's a look at Texas, where Lawrence is heading. Lawrence, Rachel, and a bunch of us are coming to a big new MS event in Texas. You can learn more by going to ms.now/together. That's ms.now/together. It's Saturday, September 26th, and you're looking at footage from similar to this. You'll see Lawrence and Rachel, me, and a bunch of our colleagues with you in person in Texas if you want to join us. Obviously, we'll be talking midterms and a lot more.
Thunderbolt Hall lightning has killed grown men in one strike. I caught it with my bare hand, and I have no idea how. 24 hours ago, I was a dead beast cripple, everyone.
When we talked, I had no idea that the person I would be talking to tonight, David Crowley, was going to win that race last night. It should prompt in all of us some kind of reflection, some humility about how we cover politics, who we pay attention to. What an interesting race to watch, but I've now studied him, and I'm so excited to talk to him.
Polls aren't people, and it's why I love being out there so much. When you get to talk to people, when you get to watch their movements to the polls, understand their lives, it gives such a different impression of numbers on a page, and it was clear that the polls got it so incredibly wrong last night, and I too am so excited to learn more and to see more, and also to hear your conversation with John Ossoff tonight.
Yeah, looking forward to that as well. He always has a few things to get off his chest. I suspect he will tonight as well. Jacob, great to see you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, have a good show. Thanks.
Okay, as I just talked a little bit with Jacob about, we have a very big show for you tonight. Senator John Ossoff is going to join me in just a moment. And today, Senator Ossoff felt compelled to get in front of a camera and say this about his Republican opponent in one of the most important races in the country.
Yesterday we heard Congressman Mike Collins unacceptably and disgustingly call for taxpayer-funded payouts to the violent thugs who ransacked the United States Capitol to try to overturn the 2020 election. Congressman Collins needs to immediately come out and publicly retract his support for these taxpayer-funded payouts to violent
insurrectionists. Furthermore, the congressman needs to publicly retract his false and disgraceful continued insistence that Donald Trump won the 2020 election, which Donald Trump lost decisively here in Georgia and across the country.
Now, I'm going to tell you more about what that was all about in just a moment. I'm going to tell you exactly what Mike Collins said to deserve that blistering rebuke from Senator Ossoff. But it does show you what a bind Republican candidates are in right now. I mean, I don't feel so bad for them, but they are in a bit of a bind. Forced to basically defend slush funds for insurrectionists and indulge Donald Trump's delusions about an election he lost 6 years ago. And wouldn't you know it, my other guest tonight is running against a full-blown election denier as well. The new Republican nominee for governor in Wisconsin, Tom Tiffany, voted to overturn Joe Biden's victory in 2 states as a member of Congress and still refuses to say Joe Biden won that election. Again, 6 years ago, still to this day. And honestly, have at it, fellas. Because as Republicans are forced to defend this failed lame duck president and his failed policies and the stories he tells himself at night about an election he lost, Democrats are gathering strength and energy and delivering actual messages about what they will do for the people they are asking to elect them. Which brings me to the guy who finds himself in the unexpected position of facing Tom Tiffany in November. Because later on this hour, I will be joined by Democratic candidate for Wisconsin Governor David Crowley after his stunning upset victory in last night's primary. This morning, he attended a unity breakfast along with his primary opponent. You can see them both. We tried to lighten them up there so you could see them and in the photo. And while there are a lot of hot takes out there about what his victory means, the newly minted Democratic candidate for governor had a lot to say about what he thinks his victory means.
Game of Thrones, Dragonfire.
About what he thinks his victory means.
Over the past few months, you've heard a lot of people try to define this election as a battle between the left and the center, between progressives and the establishment, between insiders and outsiders. That narrative misses the entire point of what we're doing. Because when I traveled across Wisconsin, I didn't meet people who introduced themselves that way. I met parents wondering how they'll afford childcare. I met workers who want wages that keep up with the cost of living. I met farmers trying to preserve family traditions.
That's the big one right there. That's why we're hurting so bad.
Open, and I met seniors who deserve security and dignity after a lifetime of
The
work.
monopolies,
I met
the price
young people who
gouging.
simply want a fair chance to build a life right here in this great state we call Wisconsin. We may not agree on every policy. We may not use the same labels, but we all want safe communities, strong schools, affordable health care, good paying jobs, and a brighter future for all of our children.
So that point about national narratives he made and what they miss is key here and important for all of us to listen to, myself included. I mean, Crowley's victory was a surprise to many after polls showed his Democratic Socialist opponent leading in this race by double digits, many polls. And after an upset victory like that, there's always a tendency to have a sweeping take about what one race means for the power of the progressives versus moderates, insiders versus outsiders. Believe me, I fall into this too. But it's also important to look at the whole picture of candidates winning. If anything, all of the results from last night's election proved once again that the Democratic Party is a big tent. On the same night that Wisconsin primary voters nominated Crowley over a Democratic Socialist for statewide office, Minnesota primary voters chose Peggy Flanagan to be their Senate nominee, who won her primary with ads like this one.
We need Peggy Flanagan as our next senator. She'll fight for Medicare for all and pay family and medical leave, reject corporate PAC money, and always stand up to ICE, Trump, and his corruption.
Peggy is going to stand up to the greed of the billionaire class.
The next senator from Minnesota,
Peggy Flanagan.
She won her primary by 20 points. That was a huge sweeping victory for her. Now contrast that ad with another ad released just yesterday by a different kind of Democrat running statewide, also in the Midwest.
I trained as a marksman in the Marine Corps. Focus, discipline. I'm Boba. I joined the Marines to fight for this country. Now I'm running for Secretary of State to fight for you, to clean up a corrupt office. I'll expose every wasted dollar and no bid contract, and work with both parties to lower taxes for families to make life more affordable.
Now you may relate more to Boba, you may relate more to Peggy Flanagan, or like a little bit of both of them. But the point is the Democratic Party tent is big enough. Peggy Flanagan to David Crowley to Bill Nye to John Ossoff can all run very different races in different parts of the country, and some of them in the same parts of the country. That's an actual conclusion to draw from last night's election, just like it was an actual conclusion to draw from the night that Abigail Spanberger and Zoran Mamdani both won. It brings us to another narrative I think is missing from coverage of these races right now, how quickly the Democratic Party can unify when it needs to. And as I mentioned before, the Wisconsin Democratic Party wasted no time coming together for multiple unity events where primary rivals came together with a shared mission of defeating Republicans this November. It's similar to what we saw after last week's bitter primary in Michigan, where after an absolutely brutal primary campaign, the losing candidate, Haley Stevens, was quick to embrace the nominee Abdul El-Sayed. And vice versa. They embraced each other. Democrats have, for the most part, not let these primary competitions dampen their enthusiasm. If anything, these primaries have generated more Democratic enthusiasm than we've seen in a very long time. The Associated Press actually estimates that nearly 800,000 people voted in yesterday's Democratic primary. And just to put that number in context, it's like, what does that number mean? You can see this on your screen. That's about a 50% increase in turnout from the last open primary for governor back in 2018, which ended up being a weak election year for Democrats. We saw a similar boost in turnout in the Michigan primary last week, where the AP estimates more than 1.5 million people turned out to vote in the Democratic primary. And that's up more than 50% from the last open Senate primary just 2 years ago. So that's a huge increase in enthusiasm in a bunch of different states. Democrats are more enthusiastic about voting in these elections than they have been in a number of years. And there's also a relentless focus we're seeing on what it is going to take to win. We're seeing Democratic voters make those decisions, like choosing David Crowley in last night's primary. We've also seen the National Party make those decisions, like their unified calls to replace Graham Plattner on the ballot in Maine. And we've seen Democratic candidates themselves make selfless strategic decisions in places like Nebraska, South Dakota, and Idaho. The Democratic Senate candidates have dropped out of their races to pave the way for independent candidates who have a better chance of winning in those places. At the end of the day, for all the debates about who has the most sway in the party and which tactics and message work best, the shared goal is electing people who are going to hold this administration and all of the spineless minions that blindly follow it to account. Which brings me to the most overlooked narrative of all of this election cycle, in my view. Because for all the hemming and hawing about the direction of the Democratic Party, there's not been nearly enough attention paid to the people Republicans are nominating to run against them. I mean, last year Republicans in Minnesota nominated former sports broadcaster Michelle Taboya to be their candidate for U.S. Senate. And she won that nomination despite saying things like this about the cost of Trump's war in Iran.
You try sildenafil or tadalafil and you want something more powerful for your sex life, listen up. Blue Chew Gold is the answer. It has 4 powerful ingredients: sildenafil, tadalafil, apomorphine, and oxytocin. These 4 ingredients work together in your body to boost arousal and blood flow, which means you get harder erections and get in the mood. Plus, it dissolves quickly under your tongue, which means no more waiting around and no more performance anxiety. Absolutely killing the mood. Grab a free month with any quarterly plan at bluechew.com and let your girl know you're serious.
Up your credit score to up your ride. Establish credit with the Chase Freedom Rise Credit Card.
Here we are in a conflict in the Middle East, which is bringing gas prices up again. I think right now it means just kind of keeping a stiff upper lip Maybe you take one less trip to Starbucks, and so that gas goes a little further until this thing is over and these gas prices come back down again. Let's just try to be patriots about this.
Just be a patriot, everyone. Suck it up. Pay for this war nobody wanted. Maybe take fewer trips to Starbucks, everyone. That's her advice there.
How about paying us more money for our work?
Moody's estimates that this war has cost the average
Why should a billionaire
about $1,100
be allowed to have 7 fucking yachts, but yet we can't buy a $7 cup of coffee? Fuck you.
278 venti coffees in just the past 6 months if you're on the Starbucks plan she's recommending.
How many fucking mansions do you need? How many yachts do you fucking need?
Like Tafoya that Republicans are nominating. I mean, the man with the aggressively manicured
We got people working 2 full-time jobs, and they still can't pay all their bills.
Michael won the Republican nomination to run for Wisconsin's 7th congressional district last night, and the guy has a very thin resume. I mean, his most relevant employment experience appears to be a year-long stint working as a producer for Dan Bongino's podcast, but he's the son-in-law of Trump's reality TV star, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, so there's that. And his father-in-law has played quite an important role in his campaign because just 10 days before Trump endorsed him for this Wisconsin seat, Alfonso changed his voter registration from his home in Florida to his father-in-law's house in Wisconsin. His campaign claims he has lived in Wisconsin most of his life, which makes you wonder why he lists Sean Duffy's house as his residence for voting. I'm sure we'll soon learn. And that's really just scratching the surface when it comes to problematic candidates Republicans have
I'm gonna grab me some coffee. I'll be right back.
Heading into this year, Republicans will be about their chances of flipping the Georgia Senate seat held by Democrat Jon Ossoff. But thanks to an endorsement from Donald Trump, Republicans chose one of the worst possible candidates they could for that swing state race. Republican Senate candidate Mike Collins has spent the last few weeks sinking in the polls as he dodges questions about his controversial comments and his ties to white nationalists. But the controversies just keep coming for this guy. I mean, just last night, newly released video shows Mike Collins enthusiastically tying himself to one of Trump's most unpopular ideas when he got this question from a pardoned January 6th rioter during a campaign event.
Would you support either the Victims of Political Weaponization Fund, Compensation Fund, or some form of compensatory relief, not just to January 6ers like myself, but all Americans, left, right, center, who have become victims of a weaponized political system?
They never did see anything politically. A lot of things have been politicized and weaponized. And when the federal government harms you, yes, they have a liability to. That's the easy yes.
Slush fund for January 6 rioters, one of whom is at your event, because why not? That's an easy yes for Mike Collins. Doesn't that tell you a lot? I mean, this is the kind of candidate Republicans have chosen to nominate this year in the Senate that they have felt they had the best chance in taking. Well, Democrats are building a unified coalition that includes everyone from progressives to moderates, Democratic socialists, independents who don't even identify as Democrats. That's the narrative that matters heading into this election, and one that deserves more attention. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia. It's great to see you, Senator. Let me start just by asking you. I mean, your opponent. Good to see you. Your opponent, Mike Collins. I just played this. It's unbelievable. So many aspects of this. I mean, there's a January 6th rioter at his event. He asks him a question about the slush fund that is incredibly unpopular. He was surprisingly definitive in his support for it. He's tried to walk back those remarks, I should note, through a statement from his spokesperson. But what did you think when you first heard those comments?
Well, as we watch Mike Collins self-destruct on the campaign trail, let's remember who Mike Collins is. He's pro-war, he's pro-tariff, he's pro-cutting your health care. And he's been mired in scandal since the moment he secured the Republican nomination over his widely reported ties to neo-Nazi and white nationalist ideology. I mean, this is the same congressman, remember everybody, a couple of weeks ago, who fled from the press in an open field, literally ran away from a press conference. Rather than answer a question he still hasn't answered, which is whether his business hired and paid the neo-Nazi propagandist
who produced his business's promotional material. This is the same congressman whose office was briefing Nick Fuentes, Richard Spencer, and some of the most notorious white supremacists in the United States about his office's efforts on behalf of a Holocaust denier, and he still refuses to release all of those communications. And you heard this week, he wants to take taxpayer dollars and pay it out to the traitors and thugs who sacked the United States Capitol on January 6th. What he is saying to the people of Georgia is, after cutting their health care, throwing 300,000 of them off their health insurance, doubling health insurance premiums for more than 1 million Georgians, he's then going to take their tax dollars and pay it out to violent criminals. And Mike Collins needs to come out tomorrow. He needs to recant his support for taxpayer-funded payouts to January 6th insurrectionists. He needs to recant his support for Donald Trump's 2020 election denialism. And if you want to help me defeat this MAGA fanatic in Georgia, it's electjohn.com, electjon.com.
One of the reasons, and you and I have talked about this before, that control of the Senate, seats like yours, is so important is because people like Collins are taking their cues, or maybe their direct direction, from what the Trump administration is saying and doing, and they want to keep...
Hello?
Trump and everybody in the Trump administration happy. And his stance on these payouts seem to be driven by what Trump and his administration have been saying. I mean, today his new attorney general, Trump said is, Todd Blanche, basically said the slush fund is dead, but that Donald Trump still wants people to get paid. Not sure how those two things can be true at the same time. I just want to play this for people who haven't seen it.
I get that this is a super fun story to not let die. But I don't know what else to say except that yes, the president feels very strongly, as do I, that there were people who were victims of a Department of Justice that was absolutely weaponized.
Absolute bullshit.
That he would want
those people committed crimes, treason against this country. Fuck off, you piece of shit. God.
Okay, I mean, there's a lot packed in there. A lot of people out there hate this slush funds. What do you make of what you just heard from him and what he just said?
Two things. First of all, of course they're going to try to find another way to do this. The president already pardoned all the violent criminals.
The president's got billions of dollars. Why don't he just pay him with his own personal money? It means that much. He's trying to buy himself a personal army. That's what he's fucking trying to do. Because we're going to have another January 6th. And that's what he wants. He wants people that he can pay, that'll show up with guns, and protest him leaving power. And even fight for him to leave power.
And if Mike Collins wins this Senate seat in Georgia,
if it doesn't happen in 29, it's going to happen in 17 when the Democrats take over, impeach and remove his ass.
To impose accountability and checks and balances depends on
We're going to have to drag him out in handcuffs.
Here in Georgia.
Hope they drag out his dead fucking body. I'm tired of dealing with this shit.
His spies
tired of hearing about it.
To seize ballots here in Georgia. We've got to defend voting rights here in Georgia. And so once again, folks, everybody out there, grab your phone, grab your computer. This is something you can do right now that makes a real difference in the fight for our republic. Go to electjohn.com. Help us get out the vote, defend voting rights, and do everything we need to do to defeat Mike Collins.
One of the things you've talked about on the campaign trail in this campaign to defeat Mike Collins is this rampant level of corruption and the lack of accountability. And one of the things that struck me, this is new news over the last couple of days, is on the same day that he was sworn in, the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel published a 21-page opinion that expands executive privilege. It shields Trump's communications with private advisors. So essentially, for anybody who's tuning into this, it means people who are not employed by the federal government. It shields them. And this seems to me like a pretty clear attempt to basically create a wall around a mountain of potential evidence, protect the people that Trump and people who work for him may be striking deals with that we learn more about every day. What do you make of that opinion and kind of the impact it could have if unchecked?
Yeah, they see the writing on the wall this fall. They see the rebuke that is coming, and they fear the accountability that will follow it. They recognize the president is deeply unpopular. He's reviled. The public is awake to his corruption and self-dealing. And so they're trying to build a barrier around the president, the first family, the White House staff, and the cabinet to try to make them impervious to congressional investigation, to try to protect all of these abuses of power and all of this self-dealing from the kind of rigorous congressional investigation that will expose the truth and allow the American public to ensure there's accountability for wrongdoing. I don't think that it will work. The truth will come out. Mark my words. The truth will come out. What we're seeing right now, after Watergate, there were safeguards put in place to try to prevent these kinds of egregious presidential abuses of power. They're basically demolishing all of that in service to this man's self-dealing, his self-enrichment, his endless pursuit of vendettas. They can try to protect him from congressional oversight, but when we win the House and we win the Senate, the truth's going to come out and accountability is coming.
Senator, we have to take a
Bit
quick
better.
break. But
You guys
I have
better
to ask you
impeach,
about
remove
some
them,
breaking
and
news
place him in
when we
prison.
come back about
You don't
that
have to
plan
do
sneak Donald
any
Trump
more charges
off
on
Air
him.
Force
You
One
can
months
just
because
sentence
of the
him
threat
for the
from
34
Iran and
felony
meeting
counts
plain
that he hasn't been
reporters
sentenced
are
for,
just
that
gonna
he's
know
found guilty.
it's staff
He hasn't been
bias
sentenced for
because I
those.
just can't get
That
over.
ought to be 10,
The new
15
reporting
years
is
right
tonight,
there.
the Washington Post
Then
is
while he's
reporting
sitting in
that the
prison,
CIA actually
rack
has
up those other charges,
that
put them on
Iranian
him
threat
too.
before Trump switched
But
planes.
first thing you got to do is get him in prison, where he belongs.
Forged beef tallow bomb.
That's the first damn thing.
Listen, if the label says forges instead of forge, that's not us. If it's $5.
Stop saying hold him accountable and just put him in fucking
On the
prison.
Senate Intelligence Committee. We'll talk about it when we come back. Back with me as promised.
Just like you would a regular person that had been convicted of 34 felonies.
Now well-documented scheme to secretly transport
Name one person in history that was convicted on 34 felonies that didn't spend one day in jail. Just one.
Tonight there's this new reporting from the Washington Post that the intelligence came from Israel and that the CIA had low confidence in it, but the Secret Service acted on it anyway. I know you probably have limitations on what you can say, but you do sit on the Intelligence Committee. What do you make of that news, and what's your reaction been to this story in general?
Well, Jen, I won't talk intelligence, but this whole affair raises two very obvious questions. First of all, this administration and this White House are infamously bad at keeping secrets. This is the same administration where Pete Hegseth texted Jeffrey Goldberg, a national political reporter, the classified details of impending U.S. airstrikes in Yemen before the air crews had even launched from the carrier, putting those flight crews at risk. We saw the apparent dueling leaks from Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance to the New York Times as they each respectively jockeying for 2028 try to avoid responsibility for the fiasco in Iran. So if there was a threat to the president, it's quite reasonable for the public and the Congress to ask whether the poor operational security at this White House may have contributed to it. The second obvious question is about this bribed airplane, right? This gift to the president that he intends to keep apparently after he leaves office, the flying palace given to him by Qatari princes, and whether publicly reported potential inadequacy of its defensive systems put the president and those who are traveling with him at greater risk than a proper Air Force One would.
No question about it. how it's supposed to go. This is all, of course, around, and this is to your point about how they're operationalizing things, how they're managing national security. I mean, they've clearly lost control of this war. And right now, people are across the country, I know in the state of Georgia, are feeling it in a lot of ways, including members of the military. I know you have a large military presence in the state of Georgia. And right now, according to reporting, the USS Abraham Lincoln and its 5,000 sailors and Marines, they've of course been on a record-breaking deployment, as everybody knows. But there are new reports that on the Lincoln, there have been multiple attempts by sailors to jump overboard as poor conditions and mental stresses, a lack of food, a lack of clean clothing, a lack of materials they need. It reaches a breaking point. I find this incredibly infuriating, heartbreaking. I mean, these service members have been at sea for nearly 9 months at this point.
Oh, man, come on. Hello? Hello? Yes.
Infuriating, heartbreaking. I mean, these service members have been at sea for nearly 9 months at this point. What's your reaction to the conditions they're facing?
Yeah, these reports.
Hello? Hello? Yes. Yeah. Yes. I don't have a life insurance policy. With who? No. What is this now? Does this have to do with my birth mother? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Who was this set up by? And no, my birth mother's name was Lorraine. You're not getting that name wrong, are you? What is the name again? No, John Schafer is one, but Jason Napier is the other. So. Napier, yeah, it's pronounced Napier. Okay. This is the first I'm hearing of this. I have no idea about this. Pardon me? Yeah. It's a light. Well, that was interesting. And confusing, all at the same time. Alright, this thing done. Where's the sound go? Huh?
Why do you support Trump?
I support Trump because I agree with him on immigration, and then I would also say like the cost of living is very high, especially after the Biden administration. And then like the oil.
Total delusion.
Did you know that he's caused inflation to go up?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue, especially with the Iran war. Cost of living really skyrocketed with gas, like groceries. But yeah, that's like the. Before that, the gas was pretty low. I think, like in the state of Florida, it was like $2.60 per gallon.
Yeah,
like
Trump
really
caused
low.
gas prices to go up by starting the war with Iran. And what have we benefited from the war with Iran? The answer is nothing.
I mean, the U.S. hasn't really benefit a lot. I mean, I guess people on the right, they see it as, you know, they have relations with Israel, but like, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that yet. I support Israel's ally, but I don't think we should, you know, and go in debt or for the war.
Why do you support them as an ally?
Say that again?
Why do you support them as an ally?
You know, I think they have a lot of regional power, and they're like a minority in the Middle East. You know, they're surrounded by, you know, other Muslim countries. I think it's, you know, important to.
So do you think the Trump administration does what it can to help out minorities?
I think they do much better job than the Democratic Party. I mean, if there's something like,
can you give me an example?
Oh my God.
I think, you know, giving out welfare and just keeping them on welfare is not helpful. I think, you know, giving them a boost, but also, you know, teaching them.
Welfare economically benefits people.
Yeah, I agree. But like, if you just keep on giving it to them over and over, I think it just keeps them on it. And it gives them incentive to stay on
it.
it.
Baseline. Many people get off of it because of the help that they have when they're on it.
But it continues. Like if you look at like inner cities, the cycle just continues. And then you are right. There are some people that, you know, will eventually get off it, but like they just stay on it long
the likelihood that people will be on these things because the way that they're structured, and this could be different depending on the state. Some red states don't structure it. Some blue states do. Is that the more money you make, that you're going to lose benefits proportional to that. That would make it so that it still makes sense for you to make more money, right? So there is going to be a notion of the fact that you will be able to make more money, right? And that you will have a baseline. That's what should exist.
No, I agree, but do you not agree though? Like when you can't have to repeat the cycle, that people are just going to get comfortable and they won't try to do something with the money, try to get them out of the situation. Does that make sense?
Not really, because I do think that the baseline oftentimes mostly works for that. I think that just because we say some circumstances inevitably this can happen isn't evidence that a majority of the outcomes from this particular policy is that. The predominant beneficiaries of these programs, right, such as food stamps, for example, are children. So like when we cut food stamps, that disenfranchises children, that ensures less children are fed.
Okay, well, when you say food stamps, I mean, I would agree with, like, food stamps. That's, like, a specific need.
That's what the Trump administration has cut. They've cut food stamps for 2.5 million people on average every single month.
and over 420,000 kids have been cut off of free school lunch and breakfast on average every single month because of it.
Okay, well, I'm not exactly aware of like that specific policy, but yeah.
Feeling lonely and missing real connection? Here, you can be yourself and meet new people. Not sure how to start a conversation?
Okay, so given that you do know about that now, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't agree with that. I think it's good to like cut waste, but obviously like areas like that I think should stay in place.
Did you know that Doge spent more money on itself in funding its operations than they saved, according to the Government Accountability Office?
Wait, what specific operations are you talking about?
I'm specifically saying like the operations to try to get rid of waste.
They created more than what they got rid of
on their operations.
Okay. I'm not really too sure about like that part. I'm not educated on that, to be honest with you, so I can't really say much to that.
Okay. So, I would say that Republicans, they don't account for the funds and what they're going to a greater extent. They disproportionately give tax breaks to the richest Americans and send a bunch of money to the Defense Department and spend a bunch of money on war, sending bombs around the world to bomb schools rather than build schools here in this country.
Well, I think like the tax cuts, I think they're mostly targeted to like lower income and then middle income, but also
most of the tax breaks go to the richest Americans.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that too. There are tax breaks also for the rich, but they also
go to the rich.
Well, I mean,
Big Beautiful Bill, all of them went to the rich.
Yes, but like it's mostly for the lower class or the middle class people. Now there are tax breaks for like the rich, but they're incentivized to put more money in the economy by increasing salaries or growing the business or growing jobs.
They're actually more incentivized to do that if we put higher top marginal tax rates. The reason why is because it will impose a higher tax rate at the highest levels of income for those employers, therefore incentivizing them to do a tax write-off by giving money to their employees.
I feel like most companies don't do tax write-offs because then they're more incentivized to squeeze like the middleman.
They do have to do tax write-offs. Every single company.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say like when it comes like the economic, sorry. When it comes to like the finances, I'm not like a huge expert, but I would just say that's where I think how I see it. Does that make sense?
No, you could try again if you'd like, though.
But I want to specifically talk more about like, immigration. That's where like, I feel is like the most important issue. I think that's why like when I voted for Trump back in 2024, like that to me that was like the biggest issue.
Okay. So immigration. So if you named one benefit that Trump's immigration policy has had on the average American.
I would say like deporting, illegal immigrants, people that have committed crimes, that should not be here in the first place, that came here over during the Biden administration.
Okay. So what benefit has that had on the average American?
Can you read that again? Sorry.
One, the people were deported under the Biden-Harris administration. Two, what benefit has Trump's policy on immigration had on the average American?
I mean, when you say benefit on the average American, I think it benefits culturally, and then also like it makes the country safer overall.
How does it benefit us culturally, and how does it make us safer?
Well, most of these, well, I won't say most, but a good portion of these are committing crimes or should not be in the first place, wreaking havoc. And they don't know English. They don't.
So what?
You're wrong. So only 5% of those detained by ICE have committed a violent crime.
But it's a crime anyway to be here illegally, though. Like that's the first crime to create. So they're all commit a crime, though. You know what I mean?
Okay.
No, we don't.
Violent crime.
Oh, we should violent. Okay.
Yeah. And then also like mass deportation, that doesn't make us safer because it doesn't reduce the crime rate.
But their statistics shouldn't even be a crime. They shouldn't be in the first place.
Okay, well, let me just tell you something. Like, we want no crime to happen in the first place. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So then, like, isn't that assumed regardless whether they're undocumented or documented? I'm confused what the point is. They're specific to undocumented immigrants. No crime is supposed to happen.
No, but when they cross the border illegally, that's already a crime. So they shouldn't be in the first place.
Yeah, but like you have to understand that do we treat all crimes the same?
In what way do you mean by that?
Yeah, like do you think that there are some laws in the books that are unjust? Like for example, people specifically who had possession of M-drug, it's legal in a bunch of states across the U.S. Do you think that those people who are in jail right now serving time for possession, do you think they should be?
I think if it's a law, I think it should be enforced, but maybe not too severe.
So you think that they should be in jail for simple possession?
Maybe not in jail. Maybe like a fee or something, but maybe not like in jail for a very long time.
Okay, so it shouldn't be enforced in the manner it is.
I would do more research on this specific drug, but yeah, I would say so.
Okay, so then the point I would make is that you don't agree with how the law is enforced in every context or how it's enforced. And that's kind of what I'm saying, is that for undocumented immigrants who haven't committed a violent or serious offense, I believe they should be given a pathway to citizenship where they don't have to leave the country, and I think that will lead to better outcomes. It will ensure more people are vetted, more people go through the legal process. It will ensure a better system, a safer system, and it will give more time for law enforcement to focus on those that have committed violent and serious offenses rather than people just coming here for a better life. So the people who are actually at the right to the safety and security of our population.
Nothing but sauce. Who got the sauce?
That please.
I'm lowering my ask to just $1 today. And here's why. This Senate race in Texas is likely going to be the most expensive and the most competitive in the country this November. Flipping this Senate seat and taking back the Senate majority will require an unprecedented amount of donations. If a historic victory in Texas is worth even just $1 to you, please chip in today.
And then that way, would you say if we gave documentation to all these illegals that are here right now, would you agree that we do this one-time thing, but we don't do it again in the future, or is that
we have to make the legal process quicker alongside that? It can't just be
quicker.
Yeah, we have to make the legal process quicker. Yeah. So that means we have to take the money that they invested into militarizing ICE. We need to put that money into making the legal process go quicker to incentivize people to go through said legal process. Because what the process right now that exists of mass deportation, that actually funds the cartels, whether it be their drug operations, their human operations, etc. So the basis for what's funding the cartels is actually the mass deportation policy. So I would argue that my process would address these things to a significantly greater extent.
I don't know if making it quicker is the best way. I think we should have. Honestly, I think we should have a big pause, moratorium, and for a 10-year pause, and then reassess.
That's unfair to all the people immigrating to our country.
But it's not a right though to come here though. I mean, if
immigration is good for our country, really good for our country. If you don't have immigration, our country will be worse off in terms of debt, in terms of the deficit, in terms of GDP growth and productivity, right? In terms of our culture. You say that mass deportation was benefiting us culturally. I think it's harmful to us culturally.
In what way?
I think it's harmful to us in terms of our unity and how humanely we're treating people. I think it's harmful to us specifically in terms of our views, right? I think immigration is a very important aspect of our culture. And being anti-immigration, I think, is fundamentally against our culture. Right, so I think it's negatively impacting us culturally to be so anti-immigration.
I think immigration should be more we should be more choosy on who we pick. I think we should not just let anyone in here. I think refugees is a big no. I think
people have committed a violent or serious offense. I agree with you, but those that have not committed violent and serious offenses, why would you want to restrict them from coming to our country? They're not coming here to harm anyone. They're coming here for a better life. And if they make our country better, let's let them help us.
but you're putting so much money into getting these people too as well.
But they put so much money into our systems. They put more money into their systems than we spend on that.
But then it takes a while for them to actually kick in, and then their next generation or their third generation. It's. I think
do you have delayed gratification?
I would say so, but I don't think you should spend it on other.
You think delayed gratification is really important?
I think delayed gratification is good, but I think we shouldn't rely on people from non-U.S. citizens. I think it's okay for U.S. citizens, but we already have people here that already are trying to have delayed gratification. I don't think we should worry about other people.
Yeah, there's already immigrants that have come over these several years that are paying for the immigrants that are specifically coming into our country right now. And then the process continues because immigrants, they decrease the deficit. Over the past 30 years, according to the Cato Institute, immigration has decreased the deficit by $14.5 trillion.
No, I think the immigration you're talking about, I think it's a nice idea, but I just don't think that's the reality though. You know what I mean? I think we should be way more particular who comes. I don't.
Yeah, but what benefit would that have?
I think to me, you're talking a lot about how it helps the U.S., but I think culturally and how it changed the country is very negative.
How?
I would say one, when you have people from certain parts of the world come here and they don't assimilate, they kind of stay in their culture.
Okay, when people come from what certain parts of the world is that?
I would say Latin America, Asia, even parts of Europe.
Colored part. He's a fucking racist. He wants white people to come here, and that's it.
Country, you know what I mean?
Okay. So then, what specific? So you said Latin America and Asia. To me, it sounds like you don't want brown people in your country.
Yep.
No, I'm for non-whites to come here, but I think they should come in at way slower rates. And I think
so you don't want as many brown people coming to your country.
Well, I think it's important keep America with
white,
with the identity that it is. But I think
does that mean being white?
I think being white is definitely that's what made America. You disagree with that? If Indians came here, do you think America would be the same if it was back then? You know what I mean?
Indians were already here.
Skin color has anything to do with the foundations of this country.
Not the skin color, but there's ideas and cultures you bring with it.
So the ideas and the culture is what's relevant to you, not the skin color.
Well, yeah, it's not the skin color, but that's going to associate with the skin color, not the skin color itself.
But it's not based on skin color, because you know that you can be non-white and engage with all of the American cultural elements that you're referencing. And you can be white and engage with less of the cultural elements that people who are non-white engage with.
Yeah, I would agree with
you. Just want people who are pro-America to come to our country. That's immigrants for them. Immigrants who are coming to this country, they are coming here because they're pro-America, because they see a land of opportunity here. That's why people are coming to this country. That's why people put so much effort to try to come into this country. So yeah, if you want people to come to this country to be pro-America, they already are. And I would argue that people who immigrate to this country, oftentimes, they often be more pro-America than the people who are already here.
No, I would.
Do you dispute that? I tend to see that people who are immigrating to this country tend to be some of the most pro-American individuals.
No, I agree. There are some people here that work hard, that they want a better life, but that's not the overwhelming majority of them. You know what I mean? I think if you take more
serious, the overwhelming majority want to come here for a better life. What?
Well, they do want to have a better life, but they don't want to bring America higher up. You know what I mean?
Yes, they do.
They're not gonna raise the standard of living.
Wait. They're in America. So if America is brought higher up, so are they.
Yeah.
Google Fiber is now officially
He's not smart enough to figure that out.
From the internet provider that stands out for speed. Now, even our name is fast.
Why wouldn't they want to bring up a country that inevitably would improve them as well? Of course, when they come to this country and they are going to live here long term, they want to improve the country that they're living in.
No, I agree, but I feel that's more feasible if you bring in less people, so you give them more time to assimilate and learn the language, and we bring in more.
We don't need to give people. I don't know. Even give it doesn't give you any more time, depending on how many people we let in. And you have no basis in evidence to say that a certain level of immigration has been harmful to us, right? We've seen immigration be wildly successful in our country.
That's why he's here, because immigration's been successful.
That's one of the things I love about America, is the fact that no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what culture you're from, you can come here and you can have a place in this culture. That's a thing that I think should exist and should continue to exist. And that's one of the things that we should be proud about, right, to be Americans, is that we have a multicultural society, a secular society with a rule of law, a democracy, where it allows for so many different people that come from so many different ways of life to all come live together. That's what we should be focusing on, trying to perfect, make it better, and progress upon in our society. Not the opposite, not turning away from that to try to live towards like a white society or whatever. No, it is fantastic that everyone, no matter who they are, no matter what walk of life they come from, they can come here and become an American. That's fantastic. That's amazing. I love that about America.
I mean, that's like the idea of America, of like everyone coming in like a melting pot, but no one like a melting pot is you're supposed to assimilate.
You don't need to use the language of melting pot. Don't even use that. I often find for some people that's a little bit too confusing. What I think that you should use is that people come here, we all live together, and we can live in peace and harmony all together.
Different cultures too.
We found a structure.
They can bring their cultures here and practice them over here as an American, because they have the freedom to do that.
Cultural differences amongst each other.
Their religion too.
From being able to live amongst each other, we should be able to all live together while simultaneously coming from different cultural backgrounds, coming from different understandings. That is the culture of America, a diverse set of cultures all coming together, not just one specific understanding of, oh, we're just going to do baseball and hot dogs. That's not the only elements of American culture. And I promise you, that's not the only elements of American culture that you engage with. I promise you, you're probably at the Mexican restaurants, you're probably at the Asian restaurants, you're probably going around to all those different types of food all the time, because those are cultural elements and diversity within the context of the society that you live in that you love to reap the benefits of. That's culture right there, whether you want to like it or not. And I promise you, you do engage with them. And I promise you, you love it too.
I mean, I would say I agree, like you said, for the most part. But I think we should slow it down, though.
Why?
I don't know. Because I think people are having trouble assimilating, and they're keeping their.
What makes you think that people are having trouble assimilating? And what makes you think that slowing down how many people are coming will help us deal with that?
Say that last part again.
What makes you think that people aren't assimilating? And what makes you think that slowing the process down will lead to better assimilation?
So, for example, if you look at certain parts of like the country, it's getting drovens of people, and it's just staying as like their own like identity. Like if you look at like you're born in Michigan, for example, like it's mostly people from the Muslim world, and it's just making all like their own little cut in the United States. Does that make sense?
Do you have an issue with Chinatown? Do you have an issue with Koreatown?
Well, Chinatown barely exists now. I mean,
there's a bunch of different Chinatowns that exist all across the United States, and it absolutely still does exist. What the f*** are you talking about, bro? What, do you have an issue with Little Italy?
Little Italy barely exists. I mean, China. If you're looking at like the Little Italy in like New York, it's
yeah. Like, do you have an issue with any of these? These are all different communities, specifically within the context of the United States. That is fundamental to our culture. What is wrong with that? What's wrong with people specifically coming to our society and specifically having different cities within our society where there's predominantly a large percentage of people that specifically are of that culture?
I know, but then they keep their culture and they don't drop it from when they came in.
What's wrong with that?
I mean, I think you should keep
some people to bring their culture here. Like, do you seriously? Do you only eat like hot dogs? What do you do?
I mean, food's like totally different. I mean, I don't think you should bring like your own, like if your religion is very belligerent or like
Christianity.
Didn't you argue this is a Christian country?
It's not. It's not. It's a secular country.
I would say it has Christian foundation.
No,
I would say
not at all.
It's mostly a Christian country. I would say most Americans are Christian religious. Yes.
Correct. So then, like, who's to say that this should be the only form of religion allowed?
I'm not saying it's like the only form that should be allowed, but I think that we have other people coming here that are very religious zealots that
we already have religious zealots in our country. What makes you think most people immigrating to our country are
Christian nationalists are religious zealots.
I would say like people from like Muslim countries are religious zealots. I would say
Islamophobia.
Muslims that come from those particular countries are often individuals who don't have those views. That's why they're fleeing those countries.
Yeah, but they still keep.
Wouldn't you think that the people with the hardcore views in alignment with those views would just stay there, rather than try to come to America?
They want the economic opportunity, but they don't want to assimilate culture. So they'll keep their culture with them pretty much. But they can't differentiate why their country stunk or why it was bad. So they, you know what I mean?
Well, okay. So I don't know why you're assuming every country that someone's coming from just stinks.
Well, I mean, they could leave for a reason, though. Like, if I was, let's say, the British, like, and I came here, like, I'm leaving for a reason, you know what I mean? No matter, like, what the country is, I stay to live here. Like, if I want immigration, you know what I mean? Like,
okay, then that's true about all immigration, which is true about basically every single American.
Especially people leaving, countries in Africa and Asia or Latin America because their countries, they don't like the living standard, they want a better life themselves.
You just have an issue with people who are non-white coming to our country.
No, I don't think with
Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Tell me what one thing that they all have in common.
I'll be more specific.
Is that they're all non-white?
No, I have no issue with Latin Americans. I mostly with like Muslims, with Muslim ideology, and you know what I mean.
Do you know what the First Amendment is?
I know the First Amendment is, yes.
Okay, do you know
freedom of religion?
It prevents you from establishing a certain religion, or even preventing people from coming here based upon their certain religious views.
Right.
Yeah, but like, okay, look at Dearborn.
So then, how are you legally going to prevent Muslims from coming to the country? Are you saying that you want to violate the Constitution to do so?
I say we should limit immigration from there. I don't think we should completely.
I think that's violating the Constitution.
Yep.
Well, if you look in the 50s and like the 1965 Immigration Act, that was passed, and that was not considered unconstitutional. I mean, it was limiting immigration from Asia and like Africa.
But this is specifically for a religious view. Okay, that's fundamentally and explicitly against the First Amendment. Like,
obviously you would word it differently, but like that's.
Oh, okay. So you're just admitting that you want to prevent Muslims from coming to the country, but you want to do so in a manner in which words it differently so that you still can get that outcome. That's still inevitably you trying to violate the Constitution.
The problem with like mass Muslim immigration is they're so belligerent, and they like.
So is Christianity.
Yeah, I could say the same thing about Christianity.
Thank you.
But that's the founding of this country.
No, it's not.
It's a culturally Christian country. Like,
so do you think that I should be able to prevent radical Christians from coming to our country? Because I can define radical Christians as any person who's MAGA. So do you see when we start doing so listen, this is where your ideological views break down. Because when you do so based upon preferences or ideological views, when I get into office and when all of the Democrats get into office, we're going to prevent MAGA immigrants from coming to the country.
But there's no one MAGA.
We don't want the MAGA Christian ideology in our country. We think that's extremist. Okay, that's extremist ideology, religious extremism. We don't want in our country. No more Christian nationalists. No more MAGA. We don't want them immigrating to our country. That is not allowed. You understand? That's what we'll do if we get in office. And then you guys will get in office. And then you'll brand all the people who disagree with you guys as religious extremists. You understand? This will break down into specific denominations of Christianity, attacking other notions of Christianity, saying that they're not real Christians and extremist Christians and wanting to prevent them from coming to our country. This will lead to vast levels of harm against religious communities, okay? Because all the different communities will start fighting against each other. Right? Everyone else has an extreme view to everyone else, right, when it comes to religion. So that's why freedom of religion is fundamental, okay? And if someone has crazy views relating to a religion, what do? We could try to convince them to not be religious, or we could convince them to hold a benevolent view of that religious view. Which is what we're supposed to do in the U.S. as well, with Christianity. Because realistically, a lot of Christian nationalists exist in the country, have extremist views based on Christianity, and we're hoping that they accept more benevolent understandings of them. or choose to not accept it in the first place. That's my view, at least.
Have you ever wanted your own custom figurine? This website lets you create your own custom figurine in many different styles. You just upload your photo or describe your idea. And it first generates a preview of how your figurine could look like, and then it turns it into a full 3D model that you can rotate and fully customize. You can keep changing the prompts, adding more photos, and tweaking the design until it looks exactly how you want.
I'm gonna wait for I see what I need, whether it's hay or silage, and those other fields. I think I got plenty of grass.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, like Christian nationalism, like MAGA, whatever, but like, when they're already American, though. There's no one from like anywhere outside the world trying to come here and like some Christian zealots. You know what I mean? Like it's the founding of like these are already Americans. Like that's very like a niche thing you're talking about. Like I'm talking about people that are actually coming here from like a country that don't live here, or the idea is
if people come with those values, will prevent those people.
But then, like, that's why I argue for very limited immigration, though. So that way, it gives them time to assimilate, and it's not.
Do you understand how then, like, under this view, we can just, like, when Democrats get in office, we're just going to let in only liberals, okay? We'll let in of liberals, only liberals, no conservatives, and then when Republicans get in office, they'll let in only conservatives. And if you let in less conservatives, inevitably, over time, it's going to lean more left, right? Anyway, so it's like, every time we get in office, we're going to increase it for liberal immigration. If that's the case, if you just allow the executive branch to like decide who religiously is allowed in the country and who's not, then we're just going to protect political views like at a certain point.
Well, what do you mean like letting like liberal immigration and like conservative immigration? Like what do you mean by that?
We think like MAGA Christian and Christian nationalist ideology is not assimilating to our culture of being secular.
But like that's already like the founding of America. Like those,
no, it's
like,
not.
That's like an American idea. Though.
Founding of America is secular.
Yeah, no. So I'm saying that these like Christian nationalists
Christianity is not a national religion.
Like here in America.
Yeah.
Most Americans are Christian, but that is not the national
but they're already here and they're already
religion.
Americans. I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm saying prevent people with those views from coming to our country.
So that's like
because the Christian nationalists in our country are not assimilating to our culture.
But they're not like Christian nationalists like coming to America. That's not like a case.
Yeah, they are. They're absolutely Christian nationalists coming to our country.
From where?
Every country around the world. A certain percentage of people are Christian nationalists. You'd be surprised. A lot of people coming from a bunch of different countries around the world are Christian nationalists. Okay? And we can prevent all of those people from coming to our country simply because we think that they're religious extremists. Which I do think that they're religious extremists. But you have to understand that the implications of these views, they don't just have implications that benefit your perspective. They have implications that could benefit the alternate perspectives against yours. And you don't like those outcomes.
Okay,
This is why we have a society with checks and balances. And we have a society where we have these types of freedoms. So that we can all live in a society together.
Yep.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think your point like exists though. Like saying Christian nationalists are coming to America and like wanting to change the American culture. Like, I don't think that is a
Christian nationalists coming to a country that want to prevent women from having the right to
Yep.
vote.
The big movement in GOP right now is repealing the 19th Amendment.
So the idea, like, the only reason I know it's not off of it is the 19th Amendment. Like, it's not also like the idea that Muslims are going to take over is just not going to happen.
It's not.
No, but
Neither is Christian nationalists going to take over either. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. I'm feeling like live streaming on my other channel, some of the other games, especially Space Crew. I haven't played that game in forever. Anyway, I'm Porky Duke Farminator. Come with me if you want to farm. This is Farming Simulator 22 Michigan Farms map. It's 8/48 on May 1st, 4th year of this map. Michigan Farms map, Schafer's Ag Service, an accurate replica of the farm I grew up on, part 119, I believe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all later. Y'all take care. Bye. Better not crash. Damn it.